Chapter 601. Jing Qin suggested a way to deal with the onmyojis of Japan. Under Junior Supervisor Ren's suggestion, the E-Masters in the room started discussing the famous E-Masters or aristocratic families in the capital who were good at predicting the weather. Yushu thought that Jing Qin would point her out, but after a while he did not say anything. She could not help but feel apprehensive. The Jing Qin that she knew wasn't shrewd at all. He wouldn't play the trick of loosening the reins only to grasp them better. If he really had designs on her, he would have made it clear long ago. But why did he hide the truth from her? What did he mean? It was getting late. Ren Qiming asked someone to record the names of the candidates and immediately sent someone to invite them. It's getting late. Everyone should go back first. Come back tomorrow morning to hear the news. Ren Qiming did not let these people stay and wait with him. Instead he dismissed them. Until the end, Yushu did not hear her name from Jing Qin. Of course, she did not take the initiative to stand out. Coming out of the meeting hall, Yushu politely declined Xanya and the other senior officials' invitation to have supper together. Jing Qin did not like to mingle with others, so he did not join them. They lagged behind the others, one at the front and the other at the back. There was a distance in between them and no one took the initiative to talk to each other. Just like that, she walked out of the Imperial Astronomer's door. Yushu looked around but she couldn't find Lu Zhong, who was driving the car. She thought that he might have left in a hurry to relieve himself, so she waited by the roadside. Yushu did not bring the two guards with her when she entered and left the palace. She stayed in the Celestial Commissioner's office for about 2 hours. It was dark outside and the entire street was filled with government offices. It was deserted at night. Both sides of the street were dark and the end could not be seen. Those who were more timid did not dare to walk on this street alone at night. After a while, Yushu could not help but turn to look at the figure standing a few steps away from her. "Right, Commander, aren't you going back?" Jing Qin put his hands behind his back and tilted his head to look at her. There was no expression on his face. Only his cold voice could be heard. "It's too late. This road is dark. I'll wait for you to get on the carriage." Yushu didn't feel touched by such obvious concern. She pursed her lips and didn't say anything. After a moment of silence, Jing Qin suddenly asked, "Will it rain tomorrow?" Yushu crossed her arms and looked up at the bright moon in the sky. She replied casually, "That's hard to say. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. What do you think? Yes or no?" "Why should I tell you?" Yushu snorted softly and asked him in reply, "You suggested Junior Supervisor Ren to find someone who is good at judging Qingyu, but you didn't say it was me. Why are you keeping me guessing?" Seeing that she was looking at him again, Jing Qin didn't avoid her eyes. He looked straight at her and said, "I'm not keeping you guessing. I asked you in front of the palace gate. You made it clear that you don't want to meddle in other people's business, so I won't force you. It's my duty to think for the Celestial Commissioner. That's what I should do. I won't run away from it." Yushu felt a little awkward when she heard what he said. She had misunderstood him. He really didn't want to hurt her this time. "Then why did you ask me if it's going to rain?" Jing Qin said, "If you predicted that it's going to rain, then when the Celestial Commissioner can't find the person who will be worried tomorrow, I'll show up and expose the scam set by the Dongying envoy." If it was someone else who had such thoughts, Yushu would definitely think that the other party was greedy for the credit. However, since it was Jing Qin who said it, Yushu knew that he was just trying to protect the reputation of the Great Peace Master. "Heh," she laughed and said, "Aren't you afraid that I'll deliberately lie to you and make you pretend?" Jing Qin still looked at her calmly. "If you lie to me, then so be it." Yushu raised her eyebrows. "What if I'm wrong? I believe that you can predict it accurately. If you say it's going to rain, then it will definitely rain." Jing Qin paused. Seeing her glare, there was a hint of a smile in his voice. "I know. So you don't have confidence in yourself. You're worried that you won't be able to predict it accurately, so you don't dare to show up." Yushu instantly narrowed her eyes and stared at him. She felt that this annoying person in front of her was not the honest fool in her memory. Alright, he really hit the nail on the head. She did not stand out tonight not because she wanted to go against Jing Qin, but because she was worried about the accuracy of Qingyu's law. The law of clear rain was a divination method derived from the set of incantations that Taoist Qin Zheng had taught her. Its accuracy was rather high, and it could even calculate the rare yang rain and the unpredictable 1560. However, it wasn't like it didn't have times where it didn't make a mistake. Think about it, if she predicted that it would rain tomorrow and recommended herself to Junior Supervisor Ren, it could be imagined that she would have to shoulder the important mission of restoring the reputation of the Great Peace Master at the Water and Land Conference tomorrow afternoon. But in the end she put on a good show, but the heavens didn't give her face. Then wouldn't she become a criminal that would smear the reputation of the Celestial Commissioner? So, she didn't stand up at the first moment, but continued to observe the situation. It wouldn't be too late for her to take the risk at the last moment. However, Jing Chen had guessed half of what she was thinking. Are you trying to provoke me? Yushu's face turned cold. Do you think you can make me submit by saying this? Seeing her suddenly turn hostile, Jing Chen's eyes were dazed for a moment, and he hurriedly denied, no. Afraid that she wouldn't believe him, he reiterated, I also don't want you to take the lead, why would I provoke you? Yushu turned her head and didn't speak anymore. As for whether she believed his words, only she knew in her heart. At this moment, the sound of horse hooves came from afar. The two turned their heads at the same time and saw the shadows of two horses galloping over with people. In the blink of an eye they arrived in front of them. Two bailiffs wearing official uniforms dismounted from the horses. Their gazes swept past the two of them and landed on Jing Chen. After identifying him, they raised their hands and showed a token. The Supreme Court is handling a case. Celestial Commissioner Right Commander Lang Jing, please come with us. Yushu and Jing Chen were stunned. The former blurted out, what happened? One of the bailiffs looked at the patch on her shoulder and shook his head. This, lady, please forgive me. This is an important official matter, it's inconvenient to reveal it. Yushu frowned, thinking that Shui Rui hadn't been seen for a day and didn't even greet her. It was most likely related to this matter. Where is Lord Shui, the young minister of the Supreme Court? Lord Shui is handling the case. Yushu was sure now. Then let's go quickly. She waved her hand and gestured to them. Wherever you go I'll follow and have a look. The two bailiffs looked awkward. It's okay. I'm very familiar with Lord Shui. He won't blame you. Lu Zhong hurriedly drove the carriage over from the opposite side of the street and stopped in front of Yushu. He apologized and left only because he had been waiting outside for a long time. Yushu didn't blame him. When she was about to get on the carriage, she heard Jing Chen say to the two bailiffs, lead the way. Lead the way. I'll take official use carriage. Chapter 602. Before the end of the 7th month, Yushu drew up a list of the palace consorts to serve the emperor and gave it to Jing Chen to look over. Jing Chen only skimmed through it once before stamping a large seal at the end of the booklet. Next to her seal, there were two thin sheets of paper wrapped in ginger wood and coated with a secret wax paste. It was called the Book of Kuan and was personally safeguarded by Jing Chen. At the end of the month, the Palace Internal Affairs Commission would send someone to retrieve it. Although she expected that Jing Chen would not have any objections to her arrangements, Yushu still dutifully reported to him. I referred to the secret books of the Kuan-Ling Bureau for the past 3 years. According to their positions, I first recorded the dates of the Empress and the 3 official consorts, then the consorts and noblewomen. Based on the lunar calendar, those with conflicting birthdays are staggered. Those with impure bodies are not recorded. Because the next month is the first month, we need to leave the 7th and 19th to avoid the ancestral taboo. On the surface, the schedule that Yushu had arranged was meticulous and could be said to be standard. In reality there was a hidden mystery. For example, Noble Consort Shui and Noble Consort Shu both had 3 days, but Noble Consort Shu had 1 day scheduled on the 15th. There was a banquet in the palace on the 15th of the 8th month. Emperor Zhaoqing would definitely get drunk. The banquet would end at the 3rd watch and there would be morning court the next day. He would not have the energy to be intimate with Noble Consort Shu. He probably wouldn't even be able to say a few words before washing up and sleeping. There was another Sun Guorin who was below the position of consort, but when Ren Qiming had been in charge of the Kuan-Ling Bureau, she had gotten 2 days in a row in 3 months. Before Yushu had entered the palace to see Noble Consort Shui, she had felt that there was something fishy about this. After Noble Consort Shui's guidance, she had learned that this Sun Guorin was actually a palace maid in the Empress's Pepper Hall. If she continued to investigate, the Empress was middle-aged and had no children. Emperor Zhaoqing also had a preference for young beauties. This Sun Guorin's position was very interesting. When it came to Yushu, she also got 2 days for Sun Guorin. However, 1 day happened to be after Noble Consort Shu, on the 16th of the Mid-Autumn Festival. The night before, Emperor Zhaoqing had rested at concubine Shu's. The next day he would see his lovely concubine. He would probably relax a little. The next day he was in front of another young and beautiful concubine Zhao. Emperor Zhaoqing was already in his 40s. He was no longer as promiscuous as when he was young. If concubine Zhao got wet, there would be nothing for Sun Guorin to do the next day. No one could find anything wrong with this arrangement. Half was Sun Gairen's intention. Half was Zoff Imperial Consort Shue's intention. Know of this arrangement. Noble Consort Shue of Shue. Ayav and Kanaf Shu Kanaf Festival. Qing of the Palace of the Shu. Yushu Jin Kanaf of. Kanaf son of Qing of Ri. On the contrary, it caused Yushu to sneak up on her. It was unknown if she would regret it. Jing Chen couldn't tell what Yushu had done to the August Book of Earth. After listening to her report, he said to her, "This involves the private affairs of a palace maid. As a man, I can't do anything about it. As a man, it's more convenient for you. You can draw up the Great Earth Register in the future and give it to me to seal. Originally, I was the right commander." Yushu could tell that he wanted to be a hands-off boss. How could she not be happy? She raised the corner of her mouth and gave him a rare smile. "Okay." Jing Chen looked at her smiling face. His thoughts drifted away. When he came back to his senses, she had already left. Yushu did not see Shui Rui's shadow for a few days. A few days ago, she was busy arranging the list of attendants, so she did not have the time to think too much about it. Once the business was finished, she thought about him. She went to Wangji Tower to look for him but didn't find him. Instead, she heard two maids say something. "The gentleman that the young lady brought a few days ago. I don't know how he found the feng shui pool you set on the balcony. He sneaked in once and we saw him." Yushu picked up Xan Lishan near the Xan mansion and got the secret of Yunhua's relics out of him. Seeing that he had nowhere to go, she arranged for him to live in Wangji Tower. She had been busy for 7 or 8 days and had no time to take care of him. Xiaoqing and Xiaodai were dedicated to serving Yushu. When Yushu was not there, no one ordered them around. So, they followed Yushu's instructions and changed the spring water of the geomancy pool where the crystal stones were kept every day and cleaned the dust. So, they caught Xian Lishan immediately. But considering that he was Yushu's guest, they kindly asked him to leave. Unexpectedly, Xian Lishan was thick-skinned. He was discovered, but he didn't feel ashamed. Instead, he wandered on the top of the 3rd floor every day. This made the two maids always be on guard against him. They couldn't sleep well at night and were miserable. After listening to their story, Yushu smiled happily. She found Xian Lishan's room, knocked on the door and went in. It was dinner time. Xian Lishan hadn't served the dishes yet. He was lying under the window with his legs crossed in a daze. A string of shiny crystal beads was hanging on his hand, shining under the light. It was the reward he got for helping Yushu make the Mujiang fan. When he saw Yushu coming in, he just twisted his neck and didn't get up. "Uncle Wu, are you used to living here? The food is good and I can avoid disasters. I'm used to living here." Xian Lishan squinted at her. "What? Do you think I'm freeloading here? Do you want to kick me out?" Yushu was still wearing the blue kale official robe. She lifted the corner of her robe and sat opposite him. She smiled and said, "Freeloading is not a big deal. Wangji Tower has a lot of money, so we don't lack these meals. I treat Uncle Wu as a guest, but you don't treat yourself as an outsider." These words were so sarcastic that Xian Lishan touched his nose. "Did the two little girls tell on me?" Yushu looked serious. "Uncle Wu comes from the Yi Shui family. You know the rules of the Yi Shui better than me. Don't you know it's a taboo to pry into other people's secret?" Xian Lishan was a great master from a family of creators. She used the 8 gates life and death tactics of Taoist Qingzheng for the feng shui pool upstairs. Others couldn't understand it, but he might. "Look at what you're saying. How could it be so serious?" Xian Lishan sat up straight and said with an embarrassed expression, "I was just too curious and couldn't help but want to see it for myself. Not to mention anything else, even if I saw yours, I would only think about it myself and keep it to myself. I definitely wouldn't reveal your secrets." Yushu snorted. If she didn't believe in Xian Lishan's character, she wouldn't let him live here. Xian Lishan was not a villain who left home for his old friend who died 20 years ago. "Do you really want to see the feng shui pool where I raised the crystal?" Xian Lishan's eyes lit up when he heard that there was room for negotiation in her words. "Are you willing? It's not impossible. But the technique taught by my master is unique in the world. How can I easily share it with others?" Xian Lishan knew that she deliberately kept him guessing and must have a request later. But when he thought of the mysterious feng shui place upstairs, he couldn't bear it. Curiosity got the upper hand. He said, "What do you want?" Chapter 603. The plot was about to enter the climax of the decryption. After the decryption, there would be a brand new situation. Shueda's background, Jing Chen's choice, Yushu's choice, Yunhua's Ez Daoist Qingzheng, the father and son of the Xian family, the father and son of the Shui family, the grudges of the previous generation, and so on. Guizi had been sitting in front of the computer for the whole day. She had too many thoughts and her brain had become hot-headed. She would update the chapter together tomorrow. She would first finish writing about the Aquatic Congress. Chapter 604. The third murder case in the Taisher Library was suppressed by the Supreme Court. Yu Shu went to the Celestial Commissioner's office the next day and saw that everyone was talking about yesterday's water and land conference in the palace. It was as if Zhang Shuiyuan's death was like a stone falling into the sea, unable to cause any ripples. Last night, Junior Supervisor Rin gave the order to find several masters proficient in forecasting rain in every corner of the capital. When Yu Shu entered the meeting hall early in the morning, she saw several unfamiliar faces sitting there. They were not wearing official robes. Some were slightly reserved and some were generous. Ren Qiming was sitting in the same position as yesterday. His clothes were wrinkled and he looked tired. It seemed that he did not go back last night. When everyone was present, Ren Qiming briefly introduced the masters and went straight to the point. According to the divination of these masters, it is very likely that there will be rain today. If it doesn't rain by noon, we will have to wait until the afternoon. Everyone looked happy. After a few words of discussion, they heard him suppress the voices of the crowd and continue, I have already asked for instructions from the great supervisor. Now I want to pick a candidate among you to try to pray for rain at the Water and Land Conference in the afternoon in order to expose the Onmyoji scheme. Who is willing to recommend himself? This time, everyone was silent again. No one's heart was for nothing. It was not certain whether it would rain or not. The sky outside was clear and bright, and there was no sign of rain at all. At that time, if they prayed for rain, it would be a merit. If not, they would become the scapegoat. It was a small matter for them to lose face, but it represented the shame of the entire Great Peace sect. They would not be able to survive in the future. Like everyone else, Yu Shu pretended to be mute, but she was thinking about something else. Ren Qiming's face darkened. His gaze swept over their heads and fell on one person. He asked, Left Judge Xen, who do you think should be responsible for this? Xenia blinked and pretended to think for a moment. She asked, This? Junior Supervisor, may I ask, did these masters calculate the exact time of rain today? Yesterday when we saw the Onmyoji, it was raining on the spot. If we only know that it will rain but don't know the exact time, I'm afraid it will be self-defeating. Hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Yu Shu looked at Xenia from the corner of her eyes, thinking that he really knows how to play the good guy. Ren Qiming didn't answer him. Instead, he turned to Jing Chen on the other side and asked, What do you think? Jing Chen saw that everyone was avoiding his gaze and said, Leave this matter to me. Ren Qiming didn't seem to be surprised by his answer. He sighed slightly and nodded, acquiescing. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Thinking about it, it was indeed the most suitable thing for Jing Chen to do. If he succeeded, then he succeeded. If he failed, then he had the Emperor's protection and trust. Who could blame him? After settling this matter, there was still another headache. As for the talk about resurrection, Ren Qiming frowned and said, Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, I'm sure it's just a trick. It's nothing to be afraid of. After exposing the Onmyoji's trick last night, the officials were no longer suspicious and agreed with Ren Qiming's words. Someone asked, Does Sir know how they are going to perform the art of resurrection in front of everyone? Chao Zuoling, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and said, Yesterday after the meeting ended, someone from Swan Temple came and conveyed the Japanese envoy's request. They are asking for a condemned prisoner and a dog, but they didn't reveal the details. However, Junior Supervisor is right. Based on what he said about resurrection and supernatural beings, it can't be real. Everyone keep your eyes open. If you see anything fishy, it's best to point it out on the spot. Don't be afraid. Hearing this, the group of people nodded in agreement. After the morning meeting, everyone went to make preparations, especially Jing Chen, who led the E-Masters who predicted Qingyu out. Before Yu Shu left, she was stopped by Ren Qiming. Female Imperial Official. After everyone left, only Yu Shu and Ren Qiming were left in the hall. Junior Supervisor, what did you call me for? I heard that someone died in Taisher Library yesterday. Did you and Daozi go to take a look? Ren Qiming asked. Yu Shu nodded hesitantly. Tell me in detail. Yu Shu wasn't sure if Ren Qiming knew about the secret of the Dawn disaster and the life breaker, so she pretended not to know and said, The person who died was a female official of the Taiching department who was dismissed. She was the young lady of the Zhan family in Jiangxi Fengshui. It seems that she was strangled to death and then drowned in a well. I don't know who she offended before she died. Drowned in a well after death. Ren Qiming said to himself and asked her, Last night, the guard said that the constables of the Supreme Court came to ask Daozi for an inquiry. What's going on? Yushu then told him the clue of finding Jing Chen's lost academician's signature by the well. After hearing this, Ren Qiming frowned hard and said, there have been consecutive murders in Taisher Library, and most of them are related to Daozi. This matter isn't simple. You and Daozi are old acquaintances. As an official of the Imperial Court, you should be careful. In my opinion, you shouldn't go to the library before the murderer is caught. Yushu blinked her eyelids slightly, looked up at Ren Qiming and nodded slowly. She was sure that Ren Qiming was also an insider. Otherwise, why would Ren Qiming suddenly care about her based on the grudge between them and the pain of losing his finger? You should also go and prepare. I'll take my leave. Yushu turned around and her gaze sank. Shui Rui's analysis last night was correct. The reason the Emperor and the others cared about her life and death now was because Jing Chen's fate had yet to be resolved, but once the great calamity of calamities' fate was resolved, whether she lived or died wouldn't matter anymore. This couldn't work. She had to take action. She couldn't just rely on Shui Rui to find a way out for her. Walking out of the meeting hall, Yushu looked up at the clear sky and narrowed her eyes. First, she wanted to let them know that she wasn't just a tool in human form. In the blink of an eye, it was afternoon. The Celestial Commissioner led the E-Masters into the palace. The E-Masters who weren't in the palace didn't know that the Celestial Commissioner had already come up with a strategy. They only knew that they were humiliated by a foreign envoy yesterday. After a night, they saw the Dong-Ing envoy again in the palace. All of them looked at him coldly. There were a few plates of brightly colored fruits on the imperial table. It was obvious that they were foreign goods. The Emperor of Zhaoqing was playing with a yellow hard fruit in his hand. He looked down from above. Under his thick eyebrows were a pair of slightly sunken eyes. The beard on his lips covered the corners of his mouth, making it hard to tell whether he was in a good mood. He said to the envoys, originally, you should have seen the unique skill of the E-Masters in my dynasty today. But with the Dong-Ing on Myoji's resurrection skill, I don't want them to show off their slight skill in front of an expert. Then he looked around the hall. I guess you are the same as me. You want to see the magic of resurrection. The imperial astronomer did not make a sound, and the civil and military officials did not stupidly flatter him. Everyone knew in their hearts that although the emperor wanted to see the trick of reviving the dead, he might not want to see the great E-Master being defeated. Yushu looked at the Japanese envoy opposite her, who had a braid on his head, and saw him stand up and bow. This minister will let Mr. Abe show your majesty the unique method of resurrection. When your majesty witnesses it, I hope that you will agree as promised. Our country will exchange 2 precious onmyojas for that uninhabited island. The Emperor of Zhaoqing smiled. My words carry enormous weight. He put the hard fruit in his hand back on the plate and said, I heard that you asked the Swan Temple for death row criminals and dogs to perform the resurrection skill. I asked them to prepare it. After that, he didn't care about everyone's expression and signaled for the eunuch to pass the message. Not long after, a guard came in with a wooden box and a cage. There was a dog in the cage. Its grayish-yellow fur was specially washed. Coming to an unfamiliar environment, it whimpered uneasily and spun around in the cage. As for the wooden box, they couldn't see what was inside. But from the words of the Emperor of Zhaoqing, everyone could guess what was inside. Whispers could be heard. Fortunately, there wasn't a single imperial censor in the hall today. Otherwise, they would jump out and criticize the emperor for his ridiculous behavior. A few civil officials frowned and secretly shook their heads. But seeing that the 2 prime ministers, Shui and Yin, didn't move, they didn't try to persuade the emperor. This death row criminal was found from the Ministry of Justice. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, Lord Li, naturally had to say something. According to Ambassador Yamada's request, this is the criminal who was hanged yesterday. I personally arranged it. No one else knows about it. Yushu looked at the middle-aged man who spoke and remembered that her new residence on Baochang Street wasn't far from this Lord Li's residence. Yamada Jiro worriedly walked forward and opened the box to check. The guards didn't stop him since the emperor didn't say anything. When the box was opened, some people subconsciously turned their heads away, not looking. Yamada Jiro was very bold. Not only did he use his eyes, but he also reached out to feel the breath and heartbeat of the condemned criminal. Kiko, come here. He called out to Abe Kiko, who was sitting on his seat, in Japanese. Yushu saw the fair-skinned and delicate Donging youth leave his seat and walk forward. His small face was tense as he looked down at the box. His light-colored eyes looked a bit dull and unfocused. Yushu stared at the youth. She felt that his face was unnaturally pale. There were small patches of dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't rested well for a few days. She couldn't tell what was wrong with his every move, but there was a sense of incongruity. After Abe Kiko confirmed the corpse of the condemned criminal, Yamada Jiro announced to everyone, "Abe-sama told me that the soul of this condemned criminal hasn't left the human world yet. She will use a spell to summon the soul and bring the dead person back to life." Everyone was skeptical of such sensational words. Abe Kiko probably couldn't understand what the others were talking about. Through Yamada Jiro's translation, she asked for a tool from the guard, a pair of scissors. She cut off a strand of the hair of the dead corpse in the box. She took out a talisman that she had already drawn and wrapped it around the strand of hair. Then she lit a white candle and placed it outside the cage of the dog. Then she half knelt in front of the cage, held the paper bag in one hand, and softly chanted an incantation that was difficult for others to understand. The strange thing was that the dog in the cage, who was initially vigilant and uneasy, slowly calmed down. In the end, it obediently lay down with its head drooping on its front paws, as if it had fallen asleep. It didn't bark at all. Many people unconsciously became nervous when they saw this situation. Abe Kiko lit the paper bag with the hair of the condemned criminal on the candle flame, burned a handful of ashes and gathered them in a plate. She bent down and gently blew at the dog in the cage. Phew. The next moment, the dog that had just fallen asleep stood up with a whoosh, as if its tail had been stepped on. It turned its head in horror and looked around, then lowered its head to look at its 4 dog legs. Suddenly, it let out a heart-wrenching scream, "Woof!" That panicked look was like a person who found out that he had turned into a dog and he was scared to death. There was complete silence in the east and west seats. "What's your name?" The Dong-ing young man's soft voice, and the Don language she spoke was actually more standard than the envoys of the other countries. But because the person she asked was a dog, people didn't have time to be surprised. "Woof woof. Don't be afraid, answer my question." "Woof woof woof woof." The man and the dog were surrounded by the crowd and chatted for a while. Dozens of eyes of the Celestial Commissioner stared at them, and it was unknown how many people remembered to look for flaws. Reporting to the Don Saint Emperor. After Abe Kiko communicated with the dog, he didn't ask Yamada Jiro to translate. Instead, he bowed his head and respectfully told Emperor Zhaoqing, "This sinner who came back from the dead said that his surname was Sun and his name was Heir. He used to be a servant in a rich family, and because he killed his master's favorite concubine, he was sentenced to death." Emperor Zhaoqing turned his head expressionlessly and looked at the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice. Chapter 605. The words of the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice, Lord Li, revealed the identity of the condemned criminal, and also verified Abe's words. This condemned criminal had been arranged by the Ministry of Justice at the last minute. It was the first time those Wei Nation people had seen a corpse, so how could they recognize his name? Furthermore, they could accurately state the crimes the condemned criminal had committed when he was alive. It was simply unimaginable. There was only one explanation that made sense. The condemned criminal had come back to life in that dog's body. Witnessing this with their own eyes, looking at the restless dog in the cage, the atmosphere in the main hall instantly became strange. Many people were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Emperor Zhaoqing's eyes moved back and forth between the cage and the Japanese youth. Suddenly he asked, "You can bring a dead person back to life in a dog's body. Can you also bring him back to life in a human's body?" Abe actually only knew some simple official language. When she heard the emperor's question, she turned her head to look at Yamada Jiro with hesitation. However, Yamada Jiro didn't translate for her. Instead, he answered Emperor Zhaoqing's question, "I can, but to bring a dead person back to life in a living person's body, that living person has to die first. Moreover, casting a spell on a living person isn't as easy as casting a spell on a dog's body. This is because animals don't have complete intelligence, so it's easier for them to accept a human soul. However, a living person has a complete soul. Unless you first turn him into an idiot, then you can cast a spell in his sleep and change a dead person's body." After hearing his explanation, Emperor Zhaoqing's eyebrows rose up high. With a thought-provoking expression, he looked at the Japanese youth who could bring the dead back to life. Under her seat, Yushu's heartbeat was abnormal under her calm appearance. A dead person's soul coming back to life in a living person's body. Wasn't this kind of strange thing a true portrayal of her own experience? She didn't believe that a tuft of hair or a candle could summon a soul and bring a dead person back to life. However, when she looked at the peculiar Japanese youth, She recalled the gaze he had looked at her during the Water and Continent Conference yesterday. That uncomfortable feeling was as if someone had seen through her. Could it be that he could tell that the thing in her body wasn't the original? No, impossible. How could this be possible? Yushu quickly denies this idea and tells herself not to scare herself. There are many powerful people in Enling City. If someone can see that she is up to no good, he would have seen it long ago. Why would he wait until now? If that's the case, why can't you let the dead come back to life in your own body? Why must you occupy someone else's body? This question came from the Celestial Commissioner's side. The person who spoke was none other than Junior Supervisor Ren, who had been busy all night. Well, Yamada Jiro rolled his eyes. I've heard Abe-sama mention it before. In the eyes of a powerful onmyoji like her, there's something called ki in a living person's body. Once a person's body runs out of ki, they'll become a dead person. Their soul will leave their body. If they want to come back from the dead, they'll need to find a new body with ki. They can't use a body without ki anymore. Hearing this, Yushu held her chin thoughtfully and looked at the young onmyoji who kept his head down. Humph, what resurrection? In my opinion, this is clearly a trick used by the people of Jianghu. It's fine to use it to deceive people, but how can you take it seriously? The white-haired Duke Jingwa snorted coldly. He was an important minister of the previous emperor and had made great contributions. When the emperor first ascended the throne, he single-handedly suppressed a few rebellious ministers. Although he didn't have any military power, Emperor Zhaoqing had always been generous to him. If it was anyone else who dared to speak so casually in front of the emperor would have glared at them long ago. However, at this moment, Emperor Zhaoqing only looked at him with a smile and didn't say anything. Someone from the Celestial Commissioner's side immediately chimed in. Lord Duke Jingwa is right. This lowly official thinks that the so-called resurrection of the dead by this Japanese is more like a crooked method used by the devil to harm people. To think that they dared to use this method to deceive the emperor, they deserve to be punished. Xania had suffered a loss at the hands of this Japanese yesterday. How could she let go of the opportunity to ridicule him today? Moreover, Rin Qiming had already spoken in the morning. If she could find fault with him, she would. As soon as he spoke, the Celestial Commissioner's side became lively. They all pointed out one thing after another, and all of their words had the same meaning. It's fake. Everyone had been prepared before entering the palace. No matter how real this technique looks, we can't admit it. There's a saying that 3 people make a tiger. If one person didn't believe it, then so be it. But when a whole group of people put on a disapproving look, those who were shocked at the start started to doubt the authenticity of the technique. The Celestial Commissioner's voice was unanimous. Even the group of Yi-Shur behind him didn't support the Japanese. The words, "I don't believe it," were written on their faces. Even Emperor Zhaoqing's eyes weren't as fiery as before. Looking at this scene, Yushu really wanted to laugh. What was this called? That's right, the home advantage. Emperor De-en is wise. Yamada Jiro probably didn't expect that these people would lie with their eyes open. He immediately showed an expression of being humiliated. With a red face and neck, he knelt down in front of Emperor Zhaoqing. With sincerity, I came to pay my respects to your majesty. These 2 onmyoji are precious to our country. They are comparable to tens of thousands of soldiers and horses. Yesterday, Lord Ida used magic to summon rain. Today, Lord Abe brought the dead back to life. Your majesty saw it with your own eyes. How can it be fake? I think some people are unwilling to admit that their skills are not as good as others. Today there are envoys from other countries here. Aren't some people afraid that people will say that the Yi-Shur of De-en is narrow-minded? In addition to Japan, there were also several small countries such as Siam and Korea. They could understand Chinese and were indeed shocked by Abe's skill. At this time, although they didn't help the Japanese envoys, it could be seen from their faces that their thoughts were probably the same as the Japanese envoys. They thought that the De-en dynasty was going to take advantage of its power to bully others. Emperor Zhaoqing narrowed his eyes and looked at the Japanese envoys who knelt down in front of him. There was some coldness in his eyes. However, Yamada Jiro was so focused on achieving his goal that he didn't notice it. He just wanted to defend himself and said to the Celestial Commissioner indignantly, "You keep saying that our onmyoji is a lie. Then please tell us clearly which part is a lie. If you can't tell us, please don't make slanderous accusations." Yushu had to praise this Japanese man for his good Chinese. He could even use such an appropriate idiom as slanderous accusations. Unexpectedly, the Directorate of Astrology was waiting for him to say this. This time it was Chao Zwilling who snorted coldly. "Yesterday we didn't expose you because we wanted to show our leniency. Now you think that we, the Celestial Commissioner, have no one to help you? Then he turned his head and said to Jing Qin, "Thank you, Dao Ziyi." Jing Qin nodded. He was already prepared. He stood up calmly and bowed to the throne, ignoring Yamada Jiro's clamor. He said, "Your Majesty, I have something to say." Emperor Zhaoqing was naturally amiable towards Jing Qin. "Feel free to speak your mind. Yesterday the Onmyoji from Japan performed the Onmyoji summoning wind and rain. Was amazing. However, there are some people in the De Kingdom who can do this." Emperor Zhaoqing was interested. When did such a talent appear? Why didn't I know about it? Jing Qin explained, "Actually, it's not difficult. As long as one can accurately predict the weather of that day and make preparations in advance, anyone can summon the wind and rain. If I may be so bold, I would like to ask you to try and verify its authenticity." When Emperor Zhaoqing heard this, he was a little disappointed. He really hoped that had a Master Yi who could summon the wind and rain. When the time came, if there was a drought or water shortage, he could send someone there with a wave of his hand. Even disaster relief would not be needed. If there was such an extraordinary person, he could use an uninhabited island to return the disaster. Why not? When Yamada Jiro heard Jing Qin's words, he was stunned for a moment. Panic flashed across his face, but he still bluffed and said, "It's easy for you to say. Then please summon a rain and let us see if it's true." Jing Qin looked out of the hall and thought about the speculation of the Master Yi in the morning. He couldn't help but turn back and look at Yushu, who was sitting below. However, he saw that she was holding a teacup and watching the show calmly, without any hint at all. However, Yamada Jiro misunderstood his action and thought that he wanted to stall for time. He hurriedly said, "Don't you want to summon the rain? Let me make it clear first. Yesterday, Lord Xiangtian only used an incense stick of time to summon the rain. Don't think about fooling us. If it takes too long, even if it rains, it won't be summoned by you." After saying this, he put on an expression of asking for justice and looked at Emperor Zhaoqing. Emperor Zhaoqing also hated this Dongying envoy who was not sensible. He was probably very confident in his nephew. Without saying anything, he ordered the servant, "Go get an incense stick and light it." The people on the Celestial Commissioner's side who knew the truth more or less showed a worried look. However, there was no turning back. Jing Qin didn't want to argue. He took a step, turned around and walked out of the hall. His back was slender and his clothes fluttered in the wind. His back was imprinted in people's eyes. He was like an immortal returning with the wind. In an instant, it inexplicably gave more confidence and hope to the hundreds of officials present. Yushu, on the other hand, looked at Jing Qin's back as he disappeared outside the palace gates and shook her head lightly. The Great Commissioner sitting in the chief seat turned his head and glanced at her lightly. No one noticed it. After Jing Qin went out, everyone stared at the incense stick. Probably the officials of the Celestial Commissioner had never been as united as they were today. They all hoped that God would do them a favor and not doze off at this critical moment. Buzz, 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 a low bell rang in the distance, echoing up and down the Fengqing Palace. It was just the hour of the evening, and the summer sun was setting in the west. The incense stick burned very quickly. It didn't seem to have been burned for a long time, and only the thickness of a thumb was left. However, it was still calm outside the hall without any sign of a storm. Until the last bit of incense ashes scattered into furnace dust, there was no rain. The Celestial Commissioner was silent. Yamada Jiro's face was filled with joy and he didn't hide his smirk. He then knelt down in front of Emperor Zhaoqing. "Your Majesty, I wonder if the masters of the Holy Dynasty have anything else to say." Emperor Zhaoqing looked in the direction of the Celestial Commissioner expressionlessly. Only those who were familiar with the temperament of this emperor who had been on the throne for more than a decade knew that this was a sign of his anger. The Great Commissioner, who bore the brunt of the anger, stood up slowly and knelt down calmly. "Your subject has failed in his duty." His kneeling was a big deal. The Celestial Commissioner and the officials all stood up and knelt down with him. "Your subject has sinned." Yamada Jiro didn't know that he had angered the emperor. He was just proud that he had the upper hand. He asked Emperor Zhaoqing, "Your Majesty, please honor our agreement. My country will exchange the island with 2 Onmyoges." Chapter 606. It's just a light rain and you've become so powerful. It seems that if I don't show you the true power of summoning wind and rain, you will think that I, the Celestial Commissioner, have no one else. Yushu stepped out of the ranks with a cold voice, standing alone among the officials who were kneeling and apologizing for their crimes. It could be said that she was being watched by everyone. Emperor Zhaoqing's gaze passed through the rows of kneeling figures and landed on her. Looking at her official robes, he asked a question that Yushu already knew the answer to. Who is this? Your Majesty, I am the female official of the Celestial Commissioner's Kunling Bureau, Yushu. Yushu lowered her head as she replied. She thought, although the Emperor has never seen her, he probably knows everything about her. Oh, you are the female fortune teller from the Great Yen examination? That's me. There was a small commotion below. Shui Lingnan, who was sitting on the throne, raised his eyes and swept his gaze across the seats opposite him. From what you said just now, could it be that you also know the art of summoning wind and rain? Emperor Zhaoqing's tone was clearly gentler than before, but he ignored the people who were kneeling. Yushu nodded and openly admitted, I know how to use it. Emperor Zhaoqing's eyes lit up. Yamada Jiro, who was rebuked, was startled. He had no idea where this woman in official robes came from. He hurriedly interrupted, Didn't the Celestial Commissioner say that my country's summoning wind and rain is a lie? Yushu glanced at him. Of course it is a lie, but what I do is authentic. How can we compare? Yamada Jiro said, I think you are boasting shamelessly. Didn't the official who went out just now say that he can predict the rain? Then why didn't it rain? I know that there is a saying in your Don, black cat, white cat. A good cat that can catch mice is a good cat. Your Don Master of Disguise can't even summon rain, how can he be compared to our Onmyoji? Faced with the opponent's argument, Yushu did not feel embarrassed at all. Instead she smiled and said, There's another saying in Da'an, heaven has unpredictable storms and man has his ups and downs. Based on your knowledge, you probably don't understand the profoundness of this sentence. Let me tell you in simple terms. The right Commander Darren's luck is not good today. He made a mistake in his divination. But it doesn't matter. He can't predict the wind and rain, but I can bring it for him. Then I would like to invite you to try your skills. If you can summon rain, then I will be convinced, Yamada Jiro said angrily, but in his heart he was cursing these Da'an people for being shameless. He didn't believe that these useless and pampered Great Peace Division masters had the ability to summon wind and rain. Emperor Zhaoqing could not bear to watch them bicker and coughed once before asking Yushu, Is what you said true? Yushu's expression turned serious. She bowed and asked, Please give it a try. With Jing Chen's failure as an example, Emperor Zhaoqing did not dare to place too much hope on her. He was hesitating whether to let her give it a try or simply take advantage of the situation and use the uninhabited island to exchange for the two strange Onmyojis from Wei country so that he would not embarrass himself later. At this time Detidian spoke, This subject requests your majesty to allow official Yu to give it a try. This sentence made the decision for Emperor Zhaoqing. Alright, I will allow you to give it a try. Yushu lowered her head and smiled. She cupped her hands respectfully again. This subject needs one thing to summon wind and rain. Otherwise it will not be successful. Your Majesty, please grant it. Emperor Zhaoqing was puzzled. What do you want? I need the order of the true dragon. Yushu raised her head to look at the Emperor and said in a powerful voice, Even if this subject has the ability to summon wind and rain, how can a mere mortal willfully control the will of the heavens? It is difficult to control the will of the heavens. Without the order of the true dragon from the Emperor of Great Yin, this subject would not dare to ask the will of the heavens for rain and good fortune. Her words were righteous and dignified. In the ears of others it might sound like flattery, but in the ears of the Emperor of Zhaoqing, it seemed to be very useful. Sure enough, everyone secretly glanced at the Emperor's cloudy expression and thought that this new female official was young but had a way with words. The order of the true dragon? How do you want me to give it to you? Your Majesty, please write a flag with a brush and give it to this subject. Emperor Zhaoqing half believed and half agreed. He immediately ordered people to prepare and grinded ink and a brush. According to Yushu's request, he wrote a bright yellow flag for her. Yushu held the flag and did not wait for Yamada Jiro to say anything. She pointed at the incense burner and said, Light the incense. The young eunuch who was on standby immediately lit a fire and lit the incense. Under the strange gazes of the crowd, Yushu walked out of the main hall with her head held high and went to summon the rain. When her figure disappeared from the door, Emperor Zhaoqing glanced at the people kneeling in front of the Celestial Commissioner and spoke, but only one person stood up. Take a seat, Your Majesty. Zhu Muzhao stood up as if nothing had happened. He rolled up his sleeves and sat down again. The others knelt obediently and complained in their hearts. They sincerely hoped that Yushu was not boasting and quickly summoned the rain so that they could be relieved. Yamada Jiro and Abe Bakue also returned to their seats. The box and cage were carried away. Emperor Zhaoqing was worried and sent a few more officials to keep an eye on them and report back at any time. When Yu Shu stepped out of the palace, she saw Jing Chen standing on the balcony not far away. He was alone and bathed in the dusk. His figure looked a little desolate. "Isn't the right commander going in?" Jing Chen turned to look at her. "I heard what you said in the hall just now." Should he thank her for helping him find a perfect excuse to avoid it? There are unpredictable storms in the sky, and people have their blessings and misfortunes. It could be assumed that she was his blessing and he was her curse. "What did you hear?" Yu Shu walked forward and stood on the 12 jade steps. She looked at the towering bell tower in the distance. A lone bird flew diagonally. "I thought you wouldn't meddle in other people's business." He asked her yesterday and she clearly didn't want to care. Now she suddenly stood up. Was it because she wanted to draw a line between them and not be associated with him? Jing Chen's eyes darkened. Yu Shu saw it and didn't explain. She rejected Jing Chen's proposal yesterday and showed that she was unwilling to participate. On the one hand, she didn't want to be used by him and the Celestial Commissioner. On the other hand, she considered the possibility of going into battle herself. However, after receiving the tragic news of Zhang Shuiyuan's death, she made up her mind. This was an opportunity. She might as well take a gamble. As long as God gave her face, her reputation would definitely be like the sun at high noon. If God didn't open his eyes, she would bear the lid of a dead person's pot and fail the task. No one could blame her. At most, she would just make a fool of herself. For a person as thick-skinned as her, compared to losing her life, it was nothing to be afraid of being humiliated. When she woke up in Yang City, the previous world had become her homeland. There was only one thought in her mind, and that was to survive. Along the way there were many ups and downs and how many hardships. To be able to reach this point, her life and death were no longer in the hands of others. "What are your chances?" Jing Chen asked. Yu Shu heard the footsteps behind her and knew that Emperor Zhaoqing had sent someone. Her eyes flashed and she said, "I have the true dragon token. I can go up to the heavens. What do you think of my chances?" Finishing, she took a step forward and took a deep breath. She raised the triangular flag in her hand and pointed it to the sky. She shouted with a loud voice, "Da'an's wise ruler is skilled in both literature and martial arts. The heavens will protect the common people. The land and water will listen to my orders. When the wind comes, the rain comes, the lightning flashes and the thunder roars. God, since you let me come to this world, that is giving me a chance to live. If I don't care about my life, I would be going against the heavens. If the heavens let me live, who can stop me?" She shouted these few words in a dignified manner, without a trace of the pretentiousness of a woman. The officials behind her looked at each other and were about to whisper to each other when a sudden change occurred. Boom! A thunderous roar shook the ground and woke everyone's ears. Jing Chen's heart jumped and he turned to look at Yu Shu. He saw that her eyes were like torches as she stared at the sky. There was an unknown emotion burning in her eyes that made people panic. When the wind comes, the rain comes, the lightning flashes and the thunder roars. The true dragon flag in Yu Shu's hand whistled through the air. It appeared to be completely random, but each wave was full of vigor. The flag with Emperor Zhaoqing's handwriting in her hand transformed into streaks of broken, bright yellow shadows. In the palace, the officials also heard the thunderous roar. Everyone was shocked. Emperor Zhaoqing's figure moved and almost rose from his throne. It's thunder," someone cried out in a low voice. Immediately after, there was an endless hum of whispers. Emperor Zhaoqing did not stop them. Instead, with a strange expression, he turned his head to look at the only celestial commissioner present, Zhu Muzhao. The commissioner met the emperor's slightly excited and inquiring gaze and gently shook his head. Yesterday, he had divined that today's water and land conference would not have a hasty conclusion. There would be the appearance of the Ziwei strange star and the help of heaven. He didn't know where Yu Shu got the confidence to stand out at such a critical moment and dare to use the emperor's name to order the heaven. Whether it was because she was proficient in divining celestial phenomena or because of other reasons remained to be investigated. On the other hand, Yamada Jiro's expression was not so optimistic. He stared fixedly at the door of the palace with an expression of disbelief. At this moment, a bolt of lightning split open the sky with a crackling sound. The sky outside the palace darkened at a speed visible to the naked eye. The people near the door of the palace quickly felt a gust of cold wind blow in. Woo! The incense in the stove burned halfway. Outside, lightning and thunder roared, and the east wind howled. Yu Shu's loud and clear voice traveled clearly into the palace and encouraged people to become restless. Everyone's faces were filled with excitement. Yesterday, when the way people called for rain, there was no such commotion. Crackle. Boom. Another string of lightning and thunder roared. A figure suddenly appeared at the door of the palace. An official that Emperor Zhaoqing had sent earlier jogged in and knelt in joy. Your Majesty, it's raining. Emperor Zhaoqing's thick eyebrows rose. Really? It's really raining. What a heavy downpour, it hurts. The entire palace was in an uproar. Emperor Zhaoqing couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and left the dragon throne. He lifted his dragon robe excitedly and stepped down the jade steps. Everyone, follow me to receive the rain. This rain had obeyed the command of the Son of Heaven. It was extraordinary. The eunuch in charge hurriedly followed the emperor and supported him from behind. All the officials stood up and followed. Even the foreign envoys followed in a hurry. The emperor and the officials walked majestically to the outside of the palace. Their eyes were filled with wind and rain and dark clouds. They only saw a tall figure standing in the rain. Her face and shoulders were wet. She put away the flag and turned around to reveal a spirited smile. Her face was wet. She held the flag with both hands and knelt in a loud voice. Chapter 607. There was a storm outside the palace, but the main hall was a scene of joy and harmony, ignoring the words of the Dongying people. Yushu's heavy rain could be said to have taken advantage of the right time, the right place and the right people. The right time was the face of God, the right place was the rare occasion of the Land and Water Conference, and the right people was the desire of Emperor Zhaoqing. With the true dragon command in hand, she could summon the wind and rain. First, she solved the dilemma of the Celestial Commissioner and saved the reputation of the Daini Master. Second, she suppressed the limelight of the Dongying on Myoji's resurrection. Third, she made the emperor so happy that he actually led the officials out to welcome the rain. Yushu's wise ruler entered Emperor Zhaoqing's heart. Since ancient times, what did emperors want in life? They only wanted peace and prosperity for future generations, and a wise ruler was not a self-proclaimed title. There was no stronger proof than the will of heaven. Today's Land and Water Conference, foreign countries paying tribute, the female celestial commissioner holding the emperor's command to summon the rain, and the blessing from heaven would definitely be recorded in the Da and historical records. Back in the hall, everyone returned to their positions. Emperor Zhaoqing's face was flushed with excitement. He pointed at Yushu and said to the officials, "This woman is an extraordinary person." Everyone praised her. Yushu knew that she had shown off her abilities, and it was impossible for her to be humble. However, there was an important point that still needed to be reviewed. Your Majesty is too kind with your praise. Your humble servant's ability to summon the wind and rain can only be used by a wise ruler. This is the will of heaven. She had done everything she could. As long as she could make the emperor happy, she would be able to reap both fame and fortune. Yushu started the conversation, and naturally a group of officials followed up. Who didn't know how to sing praises and please the emperor? Even the foreign envoys expressed their allegiance again and again. Ha ha ha. Emperor Zhaoqing laughed heartily. In such a situation, among the Celestial Commissioner's side, someone looked at Yushu with a deeper meaning. Yushu didn't notice it at all. When Emperor Zhaoqing was happy enough, she turned the spearhead and pointed it at the Dongying people whose faces were stiff and unsociable. Your Majesty, I have something to ask the Japanese envoy. Only then did Emperor Zhaoqing remember the annoying Wei Nation man. His smile faded a little and he raised his hand to give her permission. Yushu pointed at the half-extinguished incense stick in the incense burner and asked Yamada Jiro, "Yamada-sama, how does my rain compare to the Onmyoji's rain yesterday?" Many people laughed in a low voice. Wasn't it obvious? Yesterday's drizzle, compared to the lightning and thunder outside, was almost the same as the sky accidentally sneezing. There was a saying that people would die if they compared themselves to each other, and goods would be thrown if they compared themselves to each other. Yamada Jiro was infuriated. These Dan people were very cunning. They clearly had such a powerful person, but they hid it so well that he was completely unprepared. "This sir is very capable," he replied reluctantly. He glanced at Abe Kuei who was sitting beside him in a daze and suddenly had an idea. "I wonder if you can summon the wind and rain. Do you also know how to bring the dead back to life?" Alright, they also knew how to bring the dead back to life. These Dan people definitely didn't know how to do that. Unexpectedly, Yushu laughed. Before she could speak, someone behind her said loudly, "Yamada-sama, you of our Celestial Commissioner, although she can't bring the dead back to life, she can determine the life and death of people. Does your Onmyoji know how to do that?" The person who spoke was Xanya, who had always disliked her. Determine the life and death of people? Yamada Jiro looked confused. Obviously he didn't know the realm of the Dain people. Yushu kindly told him, I can't bring the dead back to life, but I can tell when a living person will die. Yamada-sama, do you need me to tell your fortune? Let's see how long you can live. Although she asked the last sentence with a smile, the way she stared at the other party didn't show that it was the case. Yamada Jiro nodded and shook his head. He could only try to be brave and said, even if you can predict the time of death, it can't be compared to bringing the dead back to life. Our Onmyoji are still better. Someone hissed, obviously dissatisfied. Someone said, your resurrection requires taking the life of a person. It's not the right way. If you don't take the life of a person, you'll be reborn as a dog. That's better than death. Seeing that Emperor Zhaoqing was in a good mood, Kong Qi, who didn't agree to the exchange of the Diaoyu Islands yesterday, stood up and said, Your Majesty, in my opinion, the two Onmyoji from Japan are not good. Firstly, there are people with extraordinary talents in Da, and secondly, bringing the dead back to life is a sinister act. If news of it spreads among the people, it will cause them to panic. Let's drop the previous proposal of exchanging the islands. Everyone agreed. Yushu heaved a sigh of relief. She thought that this scholar wasn't useless. Emperor Zhaoqing wasn't stupid. Although bringing the dead back to life was magical, there was only one way to live. If he kept them, people would criticize him sooner or later. So he hesitated for a moment and said to Yamada Jiro, Our Dain has many capable people. They don't lose to your Onmyoji. I don't want them. What he meant was, I have a better one. I don't want you, this inferior one. Yamada Jiro was so angry that his mouth was almost crooked. His plan was ruined. How was he going to explain when he returned? Your Majesty, a monarch doesn't go back on his words. In a moment of desperation he couldn't care too much. He knelt down and said, Your Majesty promised yesterday that after seeing the resurrection technique, you will give the small island to the small country. Are you going back on your words now? Emperor Zhaoqing's face suddenly turned cold. Yushu's eyes flashed. Just as she was about to speak, she heard a clear voice from outside the hall. Your Majesty naturally doesn't go back on his words. But your resurrection must be real. Everyone in the hall turned their heads. Yushu turned around and saw a person wearing a dark green robe and a square hat. He strode in. It was second young Master Zhu. Zhu Muzhao looked at his only son who arrived in time. A smile appeared on his calm face. This subject has offended you. Your Majesty, please punish me. Zhu Qingjue went forward and knelt. As he lowered his head, he stared at Yushu strangely. Emperor Zhaoqing raised his eyebrows. He glanced at De Dian. He didn't blame Zhu Qingjue for barging in. He raised his hand and signaled him to stand up to speak. Zhu Erlang, why aren't you on duty at the Imperial Hospital at this time? Why did you come to Fengqing Palace? From Emperor Zhaoqing's tone, it was obvious that they were close. Zhu Qingjue stood up and stood beside Yushu. He said, This subject has something to report. Permission granted. Zhu Qingjue immediately took out two items from his sleeve pocket. One was a white candle and the other was a paper bag. These two items were used by the Onmyoji from Dongying. They were used to resurrect the dead. As everyone knows, this subject is the direct disciple of the King of Medicine from Southern Miao. I'm good at identifying poisons. After my examination, I discovered that the white candle contains the oil of the 5 poisonous insects. The ash of the talisman paper is mixed with the demonic fragrance grass. When roasted with fire, the smoke will cause hallucinations. The former can make people faint while the latter can make people mad. It's also effective on dogs and other animals. It turned out that after the box containing the dead prisoner and the cage used to lock the dogs were carried away, the candle and the ash of the talisman paper were taken away and sent to Zhu Qingjue. Yushu narrowed her eyes and thought. She turned to look at the chief celestial commissioner. Seeing the calm expression on De Dian's face, she knew that it was his meticulous arrangement. She couldn't help but admire his foresight. So, resurrecting the dead is fake. Deceiving the emperor is the real thing, Zhu Qingjue said coldly. Being exposed on the spot, Yamada Jiro immediately panicked. He didn't dare to raise his head to look at Emperor Zhaoqing's expression. He could only bluff and shout at Zhu Qingjue, Don't slander me. I'm the envoy from Dongying. I'm here to congratulate the Dain emperor. How would I have the guts to deceive the emperor? Summoning the wind and rain is real. Resurrecting the dead is also real. You're framing me. You're being wrongly accused. Zhu Qingjue couldn't be bothered to argue. He directly opened the bag of ash and threw it at him. Yamada Jiro was caught off guard. He inhaled the air through his nose and sneezed violently. The next moment, everyone saw his face quickly turn red. His whole body trembled twice, and as if he was possessed, he spun around on the spot, shouting and screaming. His manic appearance reminded people of the dog in the cage that had fallen for the trick. The fair-skinned and delicate Dongying youth looked at this scene in a daze. Facts spoke louder than words. How dare you? Emperor Zhaoqing was furious. A mere envoy dared to play with him, an emperor, like a monkey. Fortunately, they didn't succeed. Otherwise, he would have become the biggest joke in the world. When the emperor was angry, the few people from Dongying's side were so scared that their faces turned pale. They all knelt down. Only Abe Biki seemed to be haunted by a ghost and didn't move. Guards, take them all away and put them in prison. Then send people to the post house to arrest their accomplices. As soon as he finished speaking, the imperial guards rushed in from outside the door and swiftly dragged the group of people out of the hall. The envoys from the other countries felt a chill down their spines. Now it was quiet. However, things weren't over yet. Duke Jing was also a person who couldn't hold back his anger. He immediately scolded the Dong nation for being disrespectful and harboring evil intentions. He proposed to send troops to suppress them. This proposal was supported by a few people, but there were also voices of opposition. I think that we should first investigate the whole matter. Who ordered the Dongying envoys to do what they did and why they coveted the fishing islands? Then we can decide whether to send troops or not. This was the first time in 2 days that Yu Shu heard Shui Rui's grandfather, the right Prime Minister Shui Lingnan, express his opinion. I agree. The kind-looking Prime Minister Yin also spoke up. After the two sides persuaded, Emperor Zhaoqing calmed down. He immediately ordered the Supreme Court to interrogate them. The Ministry of Justice and Swan Temple would assist in the investigation, and Shui Lingnan was appointed to supervise. After dealing with the group of Dongying people, Emperor Zhaoqing looked back at the two young people who were still standing in the hall. Hearing the sound of rain outside, he felt a little better and drank some tea. He said, "The Celestial Commissioner is meritorious for summoning the rain, and the Court of Imperial Physicians is meritorious for exposing the matter. How do you think I should reward them?" Although he was asking everyone, his eyes only glanced at 3 people: Zhu Muzhao, Prime Minister Yin, and Right Prime Minister Shui. The 3 people looked at each other. To avoid arousing suspicion, Zhu Muzhao naturally didn't say anything. Shui Lingnan also didn't say anything. Finally, Yin Tianho stood up and said, "Deputy Physician Song of the Court of Imperial Physicians is about to retire. Imperial Physician Zhu is young and promising and can be promoted. As for the Celestial Commissioner, the miracle of summoning the rain and wind will be known by the people in the future. She should also be promoted, but she has just been appointed as the Imperial Physician of the Kunling Bureau and is still inexperienced. Why don't your Majesty bestow a title on her as a reward and let it be passed on?" Some people were shocked. Although they knew that Yu Shu was going to make a fortune today, they didn't think that the emperor would bestow a title on her. According to tradition, only third-class nobility and above in the De dynasty would have a title. She, a 5th-rank female official, actually received a title. Wasn't this equivalent to giving face to a 3rd-rank official? What's more, along with a title there were some hidden privileges. For example, walking in front of the emperor, not kneeling to the nobles, riding the sedan chair at the Meridian Gate, etc. Everyone was envious and secretly jealous. Only Yu Shu didn't understand. When she heard Prime Minister Yin's suggestion, she felt that she was at a disadvantage. She thought that Zhu Er had been promoted and made a fortune. Why was it that she was given a title? Emperor Zhaoqing considered for a moment and felt that this idea wasn't bad. He looked at the two of them and said with a smile, "How about this? Zhu Er Lang will be promoted by 1 rank and become the Deputy Physician of the Court of Imperial Physicians. You will also be rewarded with half a year's salary. Imperial Physician Yu, I will personally bestow a title on you. You will be." Chapter 608. The rain did not lessen. Emperor Zhaoqing named a few officials to accompany him and brought the envoys to the rear hall for the banquet. He left the others to wait for the rain to stop before leaving the palace. Yu Shu, the newly titled Miaoling emissary, was first taken to dry her clothes and then followed. The palace banquet was exquisite and delicious, but with a group of people sizing it up, it was somewhat tasteless. She was a 5th-rank official and was only a background character in this kind of occasion. Emperor Zhaoqing's obvious attention made her the center of attention. "This jade pine is quite refreshing. Give it to Miaoling emissary to try." This and this, give it to her. The dishes in front of the emperor were very different from those on the officials' tables. They were cooked by the imperial chef. Emperor Zhaoqing's act of bestowing dishes was a show of care for his officials, but not everyone could enjoy it. The 5 bestowed dishes on Yu Shu's table took up the entire table. There was one more plate than the one on the table. She couldn't blame everyone for looking at her. However, no one felt that Emperor Zhaoqing was being overly generous. After all, Yu Shu had turned the tide of today's water and land conference. She had summoned the wishes of the emperor and his officials with a storm. She had stabilized the scene and prevented the court, which had always ruled by the way of from losing face in front of the foreign envoys. Otherwise, no one knew how to deal with the result. Even if Zhu Qingjue found out that there was something wrong with the resurrection spell, that was a matter for another time. Official Yu, do you often use the spell to summon rain? Emperor Zhaoqing did not doubt Yu Shu's ability. He just wanted to confirm if she could summon wind and rain at any time. Yu Shu already had an excuse. She put down her chopsticks and stood up to answer. Your Majesty is a wise ruler who rules the world. The will of the heavens belongs to you, so the order of the true dragon can reach the will of heaven. However, this official's body is of a mortal body. Even if I have the ability to reach the heavens, I cannot use it fully. My teacher is an otherworldly master. Before I traveled, he taught me this spell and warned me not to use it without permission. Otherwise, my lifespan would be shortened. I cannot disobey my teacher's orders, so yesterday in the palace, this official could not act in time. Your Majesty, please forgive me. With that, she knelt down. She had thought of this excuse thoroughly last night. On one hand, it prevented the possibility of Emperor Zhaoqing making her summon the rain on a whim. On the other hand, it explained why she didn't stand out at the Water and Land Conference yesterday, so as to prevent others from talking behind her back. Moreover, the more powerful the means, the more restrictions there should be in order to convince people. When it came to lying and deceiving people, she admitted that she had never met a match. Get up. I forgive you. Emperor Zhaoqing was a little regretful. He couldn't help but yearn for the master that Yu Shu spoke of. Yu Shu said, My Shifu is a Taoist disciple. He has already passed his prime, he is well versed in astronomy, he understands geography, he knows fortune and misfortune, he can judge life and death. It's a pity that your humble servant's aptitude is lacking. Even with the old man's careful guidance, I only managed to learn 1 or 2 things before daring to barge into the capital alone. Her words were half true and half false. She wasn't sure how old Daoist Qing Zheng was, but judging from his face he must have lived for 100 years. Shifu Yi paid great attention to the inheritance of one's master. Raising the status of Qing Zheng was raising her own status. So he's an old immortal, Emperor Zhaoqing sighed. If there's a chance, I would really like to see his splendor. After the banquet, the rain stopped. The left minister, the right minister, and the great advisor were brought away by Emperor Zhaoqing to the imperial study to discuss national policy. The rest of the people left the palace. Walking on the damp palace path, water droplets dripped from the eaves. Fortunately, the soles of the boots were thick, otherwise the soles of their feet would be wet. The group of people distanced themselves from each other. Zhu Qingjue walked beside Yu Shu and teased her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Congratulations, meowling messenger. If the news of you calling the wind and summoning the rain spreads, there will be no one who doesn't know of you. Yu Shu also replied with a fake smile, thanks to the great fortune of the minister. Zhu Qingjue didn't bother with her false politeness. He lowered his voice and asked, Have you found that person? Which person? Yu Shu naturally knew who that person he was asking about, but she pretended not to know. Since Shui Rui didn't plan to pursue Kong Tanhua's responsibility, why would she ask? Zhu Qingjue squinted at her and snorted, but he didn't ask any more. Is the young master of the Yao family better? Yu Shu didn't forget the young master of the Jing public house who ate the golden pill. When mentioning his nephew, Zhu Qingjue revealed a gentle expression. His life is no longer in danger. That's good. Thank you for your concern. The 2 of them were talking at the back while Jing Chen and Junior Supervisor Ren were walking in front. He heard every word and was slightly distracted. Junior Supervisor Ren, who was comforting him, noticed it and turned around to take a look. He asked him in confusion, Is second young master Zhu familiar with the female imperial official? Jing Chen shook his head and smiled bitterly to himself. How would he know when she knew Zhu Qingjue? How many things about her did he know? After she left the imperial palace, Yu Shu really wanted to make a trip to the imperial historian's library to look for Shui Rui to show off the title bestowed by the emperor, but when the cold wind blew by, she immediately gave up and didn't go anywhere in the end. Zhang Shuiyuan was dead. She was cautious and specially ordered 2 guards to wait outside the palace gate. She sat in Lu Zhong's carriage and had people escort her back home. Yu Shu slept peacefully that night and woke up at dawn. She was drenched in the rain last night and didn't feel anything at the time. However, after sleeping she felt a little stuffy. Yun Do came in with water and was shocked to see her flushed face. She quickly covered her with clothes and ran out to invite He Fangji over without waiting for Yu Shu to stop her. She caught a cold and ate hot food. There's some heat in her body, but it's not a problem. He Fangji put away the pulse pillow and turned to tell Yu Xiaoxiu, who was standing by the bed. Go to father's room and grab 3 chen of agastac and 1 chen of licorice. There's no need to boil it. Ask the kitchen to boil a bowl of hot soup for your sister. Yu Xiaoxiu ran out like a wisp of smoke. Zhao Hui touched Yu Shu's slightly hot forehead and couldn't help but complain. Yesterday I was drenched in the rain and asked you why you didn't tell me. Look, you're feeling uncomfortable now. Yu Shu laughed awkwardly. He Fangji also rarely talked about her. Don't think nothing of it just because you have a good body. After the Zhongyuan festival there will be a rain. The weather is turning cold and it's easy to get sick. Do you still want to go out today? Yu Shu sniffled and nodded. The aquatic assembly lasted for 3 days. Today was the last day. It didn't matter if there were a few Dongying people missing. Zhao Hui hurriedly turned her head and ordered Yun Do to add more clothes for her inside. In the morning, Yu Shu arrived at the Celestial Commissioner's roll call. Everyone stared at her as she walked through the door. The respectful expressions were not because of the 5th-grade iris dress she was wearing. As soon as she entered the Kunling Bureau, Xie Lan and Ren Renjiao were already waiting. They greeted her with smiles and bowed. Congratulations on being appointed, my lord. Yu Shu looked at them with a smile and walked inside. Have you heard? Ren Renjiao was an 8th-grade E-Master and wasn't qualified to enter the palace to participate in the aquatic assembly. Xie Lan was a 7th-grade E-Master, but he was a Celestial Commissioner. He wasn't a 5th-grade E-Master, so he couldn't accompany her. The 2 of them followed. One said, there were people from the Secretariat who came to inform us this morning. You don't know how envious they are that we can work under you. The other said, the gentlemen at the bottom of the clock tower have been talking about it all morning. It's a pity that this lowly official doesn't have the fortune to personally see my lord holding the true dragon command and summoning the wind and rain. Yu Shu had flattered the emperor yesterday and today she was flattered by her subordinates. She laughed. When she raised her head and saw Jing Qin standing by the window on the 2nd floor, her smile faded a little. After sending the 2 away she went upstairs. Jing Qin was now her immediate superior. No matter what their relationship was, she wouldn't be careless with the etiquette she should have in front of others. Right, Commander. Jing Qin was still standing by the window. Half of his body was shrouded in light and shadow. He looked at her with an unclear expression and bowed. He stopped her, saying, you have a title bestowed by the emperor. When you see me in the future you don't need to bow. The so-called great etiquette included kowtowing and bowing. Yu Shu was 2 ranks lower than Jing Qin. When they met, she should bow and call him lowly official or lowly official to show respect. Yu Shu hadn't thought that the title the emperor had casually bestowed would have such benefits. She was so happy that she straightened her back. If my lord doesn't have any other orders, I'll go and prepare. Wait, I have something to say to you. Jing Qin stopped her and pointed to a chair at the side. Sit. Yu Shu thought for a moment and walked over to sit. Zhang Shuiyuan is dead. What are your plans? Jing Qin asked straightforwardly. Kunling Bureau was located in the Celestial Commissioner. The spies couldn't follow them in. It was safer to talk behind closed doors than outside. I should be the one asking you this. Yu Shu looked at him coldly. What did you say to me in the beginning? In the end, Zhang Shuiyuan still died. I'm afraid the next one will be me. You can't find the murderer and are anxious. After a short silence, Jing Qin said something shocking. I found out that the Book of Xian Nu Lu Ren is hidden in the Celestial Commissioner. Hearing the Book of Xian Nu Lu Ren, Yu Shu's heartbeat couldn't help but speed up. What do you mean? Jing Qin stared at her, his expression cold. I suspect that the Emperor and the Great Tiandi are deliberately hiding something from me. Maybe my identity as the Great An's disaster has other secrets. Hearing his suspicions, Yu Shu didn't know if she should be happy or not. Early on in the courtyard of Huaixing Street, she had deliberately led Jing Qin to suspect that side. She waited for him to be suspicious, but it was only after Zhang Shuiyuan died. Didn't you believe it deeply before? Why are you suspicious now? Yu Shu sneered. Jing Qin lowered his eyes and thought, even the teacher who raised him would lie to him, let alone other people. So, you plan to find the book of Xian Nu Lu Ren and see for yourself what's written on it? Yu Shu asked him. Jing Qin nodded. He rolled up his eyes again and said in a low voice, before I see that book, even the emperor can't force me to do anything to you and me. Yu Shu understood the meaning of his words. He was assuring her that even if the emperor was anxious and wanted to act on her first, he wouldn't listen to righteousness and the emperor's orders. She suddenly didn't know how to respond. Should she say thank you? Yu Shu stood up and left her seat. She looked at him deeply and said, tomorrow night, come to Wangji Lu. Chapter 609. The 3-day aquatic assembly came to an end. During this period, several strange things were spread by word of mouth. The first strange thing was that it suddenly rained on a sunny day. The second strange thing was that the dead came back to life. The third strange thing was that mortals could summon wind and rain and summon thunder and lightning. Under the deliberate spread of some people, the storytellers in the tea houses and restaurants quickly made up a story and told it early in the morning. This is right. The Dongying villains are cunning and deceitful, but they are no match for the thunderous means of a woman in Daen. The true dragon commands the wind and rain, and the little king of medicine is good at distinguishing. The emperor is a wise monarch, and the meowing messenger can reach the heavens. For the whole morning, the tea house was packed with people, listening to the story from the imperial palace with great interest. Sometimes there were cries of surprise, sometimes there were clapping and cheering. Quite a few people were not satisfied after hearing it once, so they tipped the storyteller to tell the story again. The people of Anling City had a new topic to talk about after their meals. The story of the aquatic assembly became the favorite of the customers in the tea houses and restaurants within a few days. It spread all over the streets and alleys. This is a story for another time. Yu Shu made a contribution in the aquatic assembly, but she also caught a cold. When she left the palace yesterday, Ren Qiming heard her cough, so he gave her special permission to rest the next day. Who knew that she would be all right after waking up? She got a free day. Yu Shu went to Wangji Tower early in the morning. As expected, Shui Rui, who was busy investigating the case, did not come these 2 days. Thinking that she could see him at night, she did not plan to go to Taisher Library to look for him. Instead, she had another important thing to do. A month and a half ago, Xan Laowu entrusted Yunhua's relic, Zhuge Tong, to her and asked her to put it in the fengshui pool for 49 days. Counting the days, the 18th of July was today. Xan Laowu promised her that when the time came and she returned Zhuge Tong, he would tell her the use of this treasure. Yu Shu was sure that Yunhua was the eldest disciple of Taoist Qing Zheng, because she also had a black ring made of the same material as Zhuge Tong on her hand. So she really wanted to know what the use of this thing that Qing Zheng gave her was. Taking Zhuge Tong with her, Yu Shu took the carriage to the south of the city. Naturally, the 2 guards of Jin Wu followed closely on horseback. Who would have thought that when he arrived at the fan shop, he would see that the shop door had been smashed to pieces. There wasn't even a lock on the door. With a push, the door creaked open. "Milord, be careful." Lu Hong walked past Yu Shu and dutifully stopped her from entering. "This subordinate will go in and take a look." Yu Shu remembered that she was not safe at the moment. The foot that was about to step out retracted. "All right, go inside and take a look. Is there anyone else?" Lu Hong entered the shop in a flash. Yu Shu stood at the door and saw that the shop was in a mess. The counter was overturned and broken fans were scattered all over the floor. It was as if they had been attacked by bandits. After a while, Lu Hong came out and reported the situation in the shop to Yu Shu. "Milord, there is no one inside or outside the shop. The shop is in a mess and there are some rice and noodles left in the kitchen. There were also steamed buns and porridge. It looked like it had been left there for 3 to 4 days. It's probably a debt collector. I don't see any signs of a fight, so the shopkeeper must have gone into hiding." Yu Shu listened to his analysis with a strange look on her face. If she didn't know Xan Lishan's identity and background, seeing this mess, they would also think that it was a creditor. Although Xan Lishan was chased out by the Xan family, he was still a grade E master who ranked first on 2 lists. Who would dare to find trouble with him, the 5th master Xan, so blatantly? Lu Hong did not inquire about the purpose of Yu Shu's visit. He glanced at the end of the alley and winked at another Jin Wu Imperial Guard, signaling him to stay and protect him. Then he said to Yu Shu, "Milord, please wait here for a moment. This subordinate will go around and gather some information." Yu Shu nodded and let him be. Lu Hong was efficient and came back after a short while. He told Yushu that he had inquired about a few nearby neighbors. Someone said that a group of people came to the fan shop to cause trouble the day before the Hungry Ghost Festival. They smashed up the shop and kidnapped the shopkeeper. Yushu was surprised. In broad daylight, no one did anything? Who did Fifth Master Xian offend? Lu Hong said, naturally someone came out to stop them. But according to the neighbors, the group of people claimed that the shopkeeper was unfilial and that they were here on behalf of the master to arrest the unfilial son. Since it was a family matter, it was not appropriate for others to interfere. Yushu heard this and immediately understood. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. So it was Xianya who sent people to smash up Fifth Master Xian's fan shop and dragged him back. Were these two father and son or enemies? My lord, what should we do now? Yushu thought for a moment and turned to the alley. Let's go and look elsewhere. Based on the situation, Fifth Master Xian must be in the Xian residence. She was still holding his treasure and would have to return it sooner or later. Since there was no time like the present, it was better to go and find out. In the Xian residence, Xianya returned from the Celestial Commissioner's roll call. After changing into a set of casual clothes, she went straight to the backyard where the person was locked up. He had captured that unfilial son 3 days ago. With the delay of the Land and Water Conference, he finally had the time to interrogate him today. Xianya made up his mind to use both carrot and stick to force that unfilial son to hand over the item. There were 2 guards at the entrance of the small courtyard. When they saw Xianya, they took out their keys and opened the courtyard door. How is it today? Is he still noisy? Xianya asked as she walked in. Replying to Master, Fifth Master's throat is probably hoarse from all the shouting. He is very quiet today. He did not make any noise. Xianya was a little suspicious. He knew his son best. When had he ever been caught by him? He did not know what was good for him. The worst time was when he made a scene for 7 days and 7 nights. How could he be so obedient after just a few days? Just as he was wondering, he walked to the door and waited for the guard to open the door. Before Xianya pushed the door open, he quickly adjusted his facial expression and made a sad look. However, a moment later his face turned green. How dare you look at people? Where is he? This. Master, please forgive me. I just sent food to Fifth Master this morning. He was clearly still here then. The sunlight shone into the room with the windows and doors closed. There was not a single person in sight. In a corner of the Xian manor, a gray figure climbed over the wall along a ladder. He threw the cotton mat he had been holding onto the ground and hung himself by the edge of the roof. His 2 legs flopped in the air a few times, then he blinked his eyes and let go of his hand. Ouch ouch. Landing in a deserted back alley, Xian Lishan held his waist and climbed up from the ground. Looking around, he limped towards the west, muttering to himself, I've learned so many skills, but only opening doors and breaking locks is the most useful. Do you think I can't reach the lock just because it's outside? As long as there's a crack in the door, I can break it open. Walking out of the alley, there was a main street in front of him. Xian Lishan stopped at the intersection. He tidied his clothes and thought about where he could hide for a few days. At this time, a carriage ran past in front of him. The moment it passed, Xian Lishan saw a figure at the window. He was stunned for a moment and shouted without saying anything, Wait. I said the one with the surname Yu in front. Yushu was the first to hear the shout from behind. She felt the voice was a little familiar, so she asked Lu Zhong to stop the carriage and looked out. She saw a sloppy man waving his hand some distance behind. He ran over with a limp. When the person ran to the front and stopped, Yushu couldn't help but laugh when she saw the person's ragged appearance. Hey, Fifth Uncle, which prison did you escape from? Xian Lishan ignored her teasing and got into the carriage. He sat down panting and waved his hand to Yushu weakly. Go. Go quickly, don't stay here. Yushu's eyes rolled. She asked Lu Zhong to turn around and go back to Wangji Tower. She poured a cup of tea and handed it to him. When he was out of breath, she said, I went to the south of the city to find you in the morning and saw that your shop was smashed. I didn't know where to find you, so I was going to ask about it. Xian Lishan waved his hand and said, Fortunately, you didn't go, otherwise we would have missed it. Yushu curiously asked him, Were you caught by the left judge? How did you end up like this? I'm embarrassed to tell outsiders about my family's matters. Xian Lishan touched his nose. Lord Xian locked up my unfilial son. I won't run away. I'm waiting for him to torture me. The son called his father Lord, and the father called his son a prisoner. Was there such a big grudge? Forget it, I won't tell you. You don't need to ask about it. It's not a good thing. Xen Lishan perfunctorily said to her and then reached out to her. Where's my treasure? Did you bring it? He remembered the date clearly. Yushu took off the perfume pouch on her waist and held the Yu Ling Long with the black bead in her palm. She didn't hurry to give it to him. Instead, she smiled and asked, Fifth uncle, do you still remember that you promised me that I will help you take care of it for 49 days? You will tell me the use of this relic of Yin Hua Ez. Of course, Xen Lishan remembered and didn't plan to deny it. Looking at the jade bead in her palm, he was slightly lost in thought. He said, It's not convenient to tell on the way. Let's go back to your place first. Yushu thought about the two guards who were with her and had good hearing. She couldn't trust them, so she nodded and agreed. When they returned to Wangji Lu, it was already noon. Xen Lishan's stomach was growling along the way, but he didn't blush at all. Yushu felt embarrassed for him and led him in from the backyard. She asked Xiao Qing and Xiao Dai, who came down to welcome them, to clean up a guest room. First, she asked someone to send water and food in. She looked at Xen Lishan and Gong Qingshi's figure and asked someone to borrow a set of clean clothes for him. After Xen Lishan changed and washed, the food was also prepared. With his dripping hair, Xen Lishan sat at the dining table with a chicken leg in one hand and a duck neck in the other. It couldn't be said that he wolfed down the food, but he ate like a beggar on the street at the entrance of the market. Why didn't the left judge give you a meal after he caught you? There is food, but I don't dare to eat. Xen Lishan shook his head and didn't want to say more. Yushu tactfully changed the topic. She took out the Zhuge pupil and asked him, Let's talk while eating. Tell me, what is the use of this Zhuge pupil? Xen Lishan raised his head to look at her. He swallowed the meat in his mouth and smacked it twice. A strange smile floated on his face. Have you heard that the emperor has a rare treasure of heaven and earth? I've heard my eldest brother talk about it. Yushu remembered that at the hibiscus gentleman's banquet, she saw the Chui family's spirit speech technique and wondered why the emperor allowed the existence of such a strange technique that could guess the emperor's heart. Shui Rui told her that the emperor has a treasure that he always wears. No one can predict the son of heaven's fortune or misfortune. Xen Lishan pointed at the exquisite ball in her hand, leaned close to her ear and said in a low voice, The pearl in this Zhuge eye, and the strange treasure worn by His Majesty, were cut from the same thing. Hearing this, Yushu's brain buzzed and she subconsciously asked, What thing? Chapter 610. If it weren't for Xen Lishan's revelation, Yushu wouldn't have guessed that the ring that Daoist Qing Zheng had casually given to her was related to the legendary 6 treasures of the founding dynasty, no matter how hard she thought. In this way, Yun Hua's relic and the ring on her hand were the same as the secret treasure on the emperor's body. They all had the function of blocking people's schemes. The 6 founding artifacts were indeed heaven-defying. A replica of the clear Qi cauldron was able to allow her rotten bones to use the 6 lines technique, and the item carved out from the 7-star ruler was completely a multi-purpose shielding device. After the surprise, Yushu quickly thought of the big bet she won at the Chui family's gambling house. Chui Xian's spirit-speaking spell didn't work on her. It turned out that this was the reason. Back at the hibiscus gentleman's banquet, she had to wear a full set of crystal jewelry, and the silver ring she used to cover up her ring was too conspicuous. Thus she had taken it off at the last minute. Thus Chui Xian's spirit speech still worked on her at that time. Yushu suddenly felt a little strange when she understood what was going on. She had won such a large sum of money because of Taoist Qing Zheng. Otherwise, even with 2 strings of crystal beads, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to resist Chui Xian's schemes. Wait, she seemed to have forgotten something important. Yushu furrowed her brows and finally thought of the key point. Wasn't it said that the 6 founding weapons were buried with Empress Ningxin? They should be guarding the imperial mausoleum. It was fine if the emperor had them, but where did old man Qing Zheng get them to give to his disciple? Could it be that the master had some relationship with the Don royal family? Yushu's eyelids twitched. She vaguely felt that she had glimpsed a corner of the truth, but she couldn't figure it out. She looked at Xen Lishan, who was pouring wine cup after cup after cup after cup. She reached out and pressed the wine pot in front of him. She asked suspiciously, Since it is such a treasure, why did it fall into the hands of 5th uncle? Moreover, Xen Lishan knew the origin of Zhuge Tong. It was hard for her not to think of something bad. She questioned it. However, Xen Lishan didn't panic at all. He just had a bitter expression. It was probably because he had drunk a few mouthfuls of wine, and some things had been suppressed in his heart for too long. He always wanted to pour it out. In the past, I had a close relationship with Yin Hua Ez. Before he passed away, he had asked someone to give Zhuge Tong to me. However, due to a series of circumstances, I only managed to get my hands on him after more than 10 years. Hence, I missed out on some things. Yu Shu only understood half of what he said and thought that he was hiding it on purpose. He thought of the rumors about Xian Lishan. He couldn't help but imagine, 20 years ago, when the talented Yun Hua appeared in the capital, the disciples of the aristocratic families were either trampled under his feet or subdued by him. Xian Laowu was one of them. Later, Yun Hua predicted that he would face imminent disaster. Thus, he gave the secret treasure to the other party. However, the treasure didn't fall into Xian Lishan's hands. Instead, it was taken by his father, Xian Ya. When Yun Hua died, Xian Laowu was kept in the dark. Later, he became famous in Dian. Until a few years ago, he accidentally found out that Xian Ya had embezzled Yun Hua's relics. So he turned against his father and stole Zhuge Tong, and left the family. In order to recover the treasure, Xian Ya searched everywhere for the whereabouts of Xian Lishan. Fortunately, Xian Lishan had this item with him. It was not easy for Xian Ya to predict his whereabouts. So he stayed in the capital without fear and ambushed his father. Some time ago, Xian Lishan probably realized that Xian Ya had found him. Instead of running away, he transferred the Zhuge Tong to her, a person who had nothing to do with him. This made Xian Ya fail to find him. Yu Shu felt that her guess was very reliable. There was only one doubt. How can you be sure that Yun Hua's relic is the same as the one on the emperor's body, that it came from the Seven Stars ruler? Could it be that other heavenly materials and earthly treasures have the same effects? Xian Ya had told her before that the 6 founding vessels had been buried for a long time. It was also a taboo topic. There were not many records in the history books. In the past 200 to 300 years, there were not many people in the world who could call out their full names. This time, Xian Lishan did not answer her directly. Instead, he pondered for a moment. His face revealed a hint of mockery. You should know about my Xian family's list of strange and rare objects. Yu Shu nodded. She had an incomplete copy in her hands. It was given to her by the ancestor of the Xian family to thank her for saving Xian Lu. On the list of wondrous and rare objects, there are pictures of the 6 founding armaments. Although only the Taiqing cauldron records some forging methods, those pictures are vivid and lifelike. I've seen it before. The 7-star ruler is a white ruler, with 7 black beads embedded on its body in the form of the Big Dipper. The one in Zhuge Tong is exactly the same color and size as the one on it. It must be one that was carved out from the 7-star ruler. Yu Shu was stunned. She asked, "Have you seen the one on the emperor?" Xian Lishan shook his head. He had never been an official. How many opportunities did he have to meet the emperor? Naturally, he had never seen it. Yu Shu could not help but look down at her left hand. She felt strange again. The black pearl in Yun Hua's Zhuge Tong was only the size of a mung bean. The ring she hid on her hand was at least the size of 2 mung beans. It was probably made by Qing Zheng by melting 2 of the pearls from the 7 stars ruler. Should she be happy that her master was more generous to her than to eldest brother? She just did not know how many the emperor had. Yu Shu calmed her fluctuating emotions. She raised her head and stared at Xian Laowu. "Uncle Wu, why did you tell me these shameful secrets? Just because she helped him keep Yun Hua's relics? Stop fooling around." She did not forget how Xian Lishan, the profiteer, had extorted her. Hee hee. Xian Lishan laughed inexplicably. He took the wine pot under her hand. He raised his head and drank a few mouthfuls. He burped and wiped his mouth. He narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of the void. He said vaguely, "I did not intend to explain it to you in the beginning. But later something unexpected happened. You actually know the art of determining death. I want to ask you to help me calculate a person's fortune. You can just treat these secrets as the deposit I paid you in advance." An idea flashed in Yu Shu's mind. She suddenly guessed who Xian Lishan wanted to calculate a person's fortune. She blurted out, "You want me to calculate? Is it Yun Hua's EZ?" Xian Lishan nodded slowly. Yu Shu did not show it on her face, but her heart was bursting with joy. She had been searching high and low for a long time only to find it by chance. She had long suspected that there was something fishy about Yun Hua's death, so she wanted to get Yun Hua's 8 characters to calculate his background. But Yun Hua was a mysterious person. How could it be so easy to get his 8 characters? Even Shui Rui admitted that he could not do it. Yu Shu pulled a long face. She did not let herself appear too eager. She said to Xian Lishan, "As far as I know, Yun Hua's EZ died because of love for Princess Liu Royal. Why do you still want me to do a divination? If that's the case, I would not have done it. Xan Lishan's expression suddenly turned cold. You don't have to trick me. I will tell you clearly what I can tell you. Don't expect me to say a word more to you if I can't tell you. Yu Shu nodded sensibly and said, All right, I will help you do a divination. You tell me Yunhua's EZ's 8 characters of birth. I will write it down. As she said this, she went into the study next door and quickly took out a pen and paper. Xan Lishan seemed to be a little drunk. He supported his forehead with one hand and half closed his eyes. He recalled Yunhua's birthday and said, Xan Yu year. When he said this, he did not notice that Yu Shu's hand, which was holding the pen, trembled. Looking at the familiar 8 characters on the paper, Yu Shu held her breath. She felt that her heart was beating so fast that it was about to jump out of her throat. Wasn't this the Mr. Xan Yu that Xan Yu wanted her to do a divination on? So Yunhua was Mr. Xan Yu. The person that Xan Yu wanted her to do a divination was also Yunhua. Why Yunhua was he still alive? Chapter 6:11. After settling Xan Lishan down, Yu Shu returned to her room with a heavy heart. She ordered the maids outside the door not to disturb her. In the dark of the study, she found the record of her prediction of Mr. Shinyo's death date and checked it several times. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? The Xian father and son asked her to predict the person's birth date and 8 characters were exactly the same. Everyone knew that Yunhua's son had died for his wife after Princess Liyue died of illness. Yu Shu had gotten a lot of information from Xian Lishan. Back then, he had told outsiders that Liyue had passed away in less than half a month after giving birth to Jingqin. Yunhua followed closely behind and died in the 4th month of the 13th year of Baotai. Xan Yu told her that Mr. Shinyo's death date was between February and May. It was also after April that he heard the news of his death. The father and son's statements coincided with each other. It was obvious that Yunhua Yi's son was Mr. Xan Yu. Looking at her prediction, Mr. Shinyo met with 2 disasters in the 13th year of Baotai. The first was a fire in February, but he survived and didn't lose his life. The second was a bereavement at the beginning of May. He lost a relative. This relative was undoubtedly his wife, Princess Liyue. In the eyes of the world, Yunhua was a legend who had died many years ago. The date of his death was also a special day. It was the 5th of May, the Dragon Boat Festival. However, Yu Shu did not find any disaster on this day. There was no sign that he was about to die. Obviously, Yunhua faked his death. However, everyone thought that he was really dead, regardless of whether they thought that he had been killed or that he had committed suicide for love. She tried hard to guess what happened 20 years ago. She guessed that Yunhua disappeared after the fire. So Xan Yu said that the last time she saw him was in February. She guessed that after Yunhua disappeared, the royal family could not find him, so after Princess Liyue died, they made up the story that he died for love. They let him die. So was Yunhua still alive? Yu Shu was not sure. Only when she used the law of time of calamity to predict the disasters for him in the past 20 years could she confirm whether he was dead or alive. 20 years. This isn't something that can be calculated in a day or two. It will take at least half a month. Yu Shu rubbed her forehead anxiously. Suddenly, her fingers paused and she opened her eyes with a happy expression. Right, I can use the 6 lines. The art of 6 lines could not determine life and death, but the art of 6 lines had a section on good or bad luck. It could use the birth date of a child to determine whether the parents were healthy or not. Yao Yin only needed to get the date of birth of his parents. The 8 characters of Jing Chen's birth. Long after he regained his memories. She had already asked about it. Now that she knew Yunhua's horoscope, she only needed to do a divination. Regardless of what happened to Jing Chen's parents, Princess Liyue was already dead. If it was not a hexagram, it would prove that both his parents were dead. If it was a hexagram, it would prove that Yunhua was still alive. Yu Shu did as she said. She hurriedly took out the small blue stove and the tihu incense from the secret compartment of the bookcase. In the afternoon, after reporting to Guo Huaiyan the progress of the investigation of the new murder case in Taisha Shuyuan, Shui Rui walked out of the Supreme Court alone. The sun above their heads made people dizzy. The patrolling guards were already sweating. Shui Rui slowly waved the Mujiang fan in his hand, but he did not feel hot. At this time, his mind was not thinking about the case, but the off-topic words that Guo Huaiyan had said to him just now. Just in time for this murder case. You were not able to come for the 2 days of the aquatic conference. Did you hear that the Celestial Commissioner's female officer Yu was appointed as the Miaoling messenger by His Majesty? The day before yesterday it really shocked this old man. I didn't expect that in my lifetime, I would be able to see with my own eyes the magic of a mortal who can summon wind and rain. Your sworn sister's ability is really amazing. Shui Rui had not heard the news that Yu Shu was given a title. He had been investigating the case in Taisher Shuyuan for the past 2 days and did not go home. He did not know that Yu Shu had quietly made such a name for herself. Even he was taken aback by this. After the surprise he fell into deep thought. Shui Rui dared to say that other than Yu Shu herself, he was the one who knew her best. Whether she could summon wind and rain or not, how could he not know? Presumably, it was the same as the death sentence strange art. It was a battle that she had used opportunistically. And the trigger that forced her to be eager to show off was probably the tragic death of Zhang Shuiyuan. Alas! Shui Rui sighed softly, closed the fan and touched his forehead. He knew that she would not behave herself and wait for him to come up with a plan. But after not seeing her for a few days, she had already made such a big move. She was really swift and decisive, which made him feel both relieved and worried. Shui Rui returned to Wangji Tower. Hearing that there was a guest in the backyard, he did not disturb them. He changed into casual clothes downstairs and went to the second floor. As soon as he entered the door, he saw Yu Shu sitting in the living room, holding a teacup in a daze. He could not help but stop and look at her. Probably because she had thought too much, she had clearly lost weight in the past 2 days. The apricot-colored silk dress fitted her waist and shoulders, making her look even more delicate from head to toe. That plain face that did not have much femininity always had an inexhaustible spirit. Even if she was in a daze, it would not dissipate. When Yu Shu came back to her senses, she found that Shui Rui was standing at the door. She did not know how long he had been standing there looking at her. His eyes were so focused that she immediately felt embarrassed. Cough, big brother is back. Yu Shu cleared her throat, stood up, moved her numb legs and sat back down. Shui Rui walked to her side in a few steps, put away his fan and sat opposite her. Did you not sleep well last night? Yu Shu shook her head. Shui Rui raised his finger and swept it under her eyes and said, Your eyes are red and you still say no. Yu Shu smiled and said, It was not because I stayed up late. I was just touched by the incense just now, it is not a problem. Shui Rui's nose moved and he raised his eyebrows. You use Tihu incense? You have a good nose. Yu Shu lifted her sleeve and sniffed. There was a little smell, but he could smell it even though they were separated by a few feet. She did not know that Shui Rui was raised by Shui Lingnan since childhood. What he learned was not only temperament and strategy. In order to prevent the eldest grandson of the Shui family from being assassinated, Shui Lingnan's education could be said to be in all aspects. What should be the smell of spices and herbs? What should not be the smell? Shui Rui only smelled it once and he would remember it in his heart. Why do you need to use the 6 lines divination? Shui Rui asked. Yu Shu crossed her hands in front of her stomach and her eyes changed. In the morning I went to Xan Mansion to visit, and guess who I met on the street in front of the door? Shui Rui shook his head and said, I heard that you brought someone back and he is resting in the guest room. It is the 5th master of the Xian family who was expelled, Xian Lishan, the top of the 2 rankings. Shui Rui heard something strange and his body leaned forward slightly, and his eyes stared at her. What happened? Yu Shu's lips moved a few times and she suddenly stood up, went forward to close the door and returned to her seat. She gritted her teeth and whispered to him, Big brother, I told you not to be too surprised. I have calculated that the eldest Shixiang whom I have no chance to meet, Yunhua Yitzi, is still alive. Chapter 6:12. Yu Shu told Shui Rui in detail that the father and son of the Xian family had asked her to predict Yunhua's death. Rather than saying that Shui Rui's reaction was surprise, it would be better to say that he was bewildered. So he's still alive? It can't be wrong. I used Jing Chen's horoscope 3 times and the result was the same. Princess Royal Luyue passed away 20 years ago. If Yunhua is also dead, then the 6 lines will not be a hexagram at all. After Yu Shu finished speaking, she did not see Shui Rui reply for a long time. Looking at his erratic eyes, she raised her hand and waved it in front of his eyes. Big brother? What are you thinking about? Shui Rui put away his thoughts of running away and said to her, I have some suspicions but I can't confirm it yet. I won't tell you for the time being. Yu Shu nodded indifferently and continued her previous words with some joy. This is good news for us. This is good news for us. Yunhua is my eldest senior brother. Back then, his purpose of entering the capital city was the same as mine. which was to destroy the Book of Mystic Fairy's 6 wrens. However, I don't know where he is hiding now. Otherwise we can find him and ask him clearly. Shui Rui looked at her and asked, "Are you going to tell Jing Chen about this?" Yushu had never thought about this before. After thinking for a while, she nodded gently. "I asked him to come to Wangji Tower tonight. I will tell him then." Shui Rui said slowly, "Jing Chen will be surprised when he hears this news." Yushu said, "I didn't tell him because I wanted to give him a surprise. I just think of it as repaying him for not hiding the matter of the life breaker from me. Moreover, Yunhua is Jing Chen's biological father and his closest relative. He has a reason to know that his father is still alive. As an insider, what right do I have to hide it from him?" Shui Rui's eyes darkened a few times and he said to himself, "Does he have a reason to know? Why, do you think it's inappropriate?" Shui Rui shook his head and said, "It's a good idea to tell him. Let him know that there is something fishy about Yunhua Ez's death back then, so he won't blindly listen to the arrangements of that side. The more suspicious he is, the better." Yushu suddenly thought of yesterday morning at the Kunling Bureau. Jing Chen hesitated for a while before deciding not to mention it in front of Shui Rui. It had nothing to do with whether she believed in Jing Chen's promise or not. She just felt that it was stupid to gossip about her ex-boyfriend in front of her current lover. After she shared this shocking discovery with Shui Rui, Yushu also calmed down from the panic she felt when she found out that Yunhua was still alive. She was in the mood to talk about other things. "Big brother, you've heard of my bravery in the aquatic conclave." Shui Rui smiled. "You're referring to the fact that you took advantage of His Majesty's tiger skin. Did you fool a bunch of people?" "What do you mean by bluffing?" "I'm truly talented," Yushu mumbled. But she did not have much confidence. Shui Rui knew her the best. It would be strange if he believed that she could really summon the wind and summon the rain. "You're really bold," Shui Rui said worriedly. "You've even lied to His Majesty. Aren't you afraid that you'll have a hard time getting off in the future? If there's a drought, what will you do when the Emperor sends you to the place to make rain?" Yushu became proud again. "I thought about it, so I told them that day. If I use this ability of mine, I'll die. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to return to Turin." Shui Rui was relieved. He raised his hand and flicked her forehead. He chuckled softly and said, "You're so cunning." In the evening, Jing Chen came. Yushu heard from the waiter that Xan Lishan was still sleeping soundly in the room. To prevent him from waking up and bumping into Jing Chen, she sent Gui Ba to guard outside Xan Lishan's mountain gate. Little Qing took Jing Chen to the slightly deserted 3rd floor. Yushu and Shui Rui were waiting in the tea room. There were 2 blue and white porcelain lamps on both sides of the tea room, illuminating the room. Jing Chen saw Shui Rui, who was wearing a bamboo gown and sitting leisurely. He stopped in front of the door and looked at Yushu with a tired expression. Shui Rui closed the lid of the tea and stood up. He said, "Brother Jing, please come in. It's me who wants to see you today. I have something to discuss with you." Jing Chen looked at Yushu's indifferent face under the lamp. The light in his eyes dimmed and he stepped in. The maidservant closed the door behind him. The 3 of them were in the same room. There was a strange silence in the air. The first to break the silence was Jing Chen. "Have you told him everything about me and you?" Of course this question was asked to Yushu. He didn't mean to blame her, but he looked at her without moving his eyes. Yushu was silent for a moment. When she was about to answer, she heard a voice beside her. "If you're talking about the Great Trouble and the Life Breaker, I know everything." Jing Chen then turned his eyes to Shui Rui. Looking at the man who always appeared beside Yushu, there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. He knew this feeling. It was because there were many things that he should have done. Accompany her, protect her, and not let her be bullied. He couldn't do it, but the person in front of him did it. Shui Rui frankly met Jing Chen's gaze. Not so long ago he had envied this person. Perhaps Jing Chen's background was slightly more unfortunate than his own, but he was fortunate enough to meet a person who was worth sacrificing for. Unfortunately, he was unable to cherish her and missed out on her. "What do you want to say to me today?" With all due respect, Shui Rui stopped being polite and his voice became cold. "Brother Jing is righteous. You can set an example for the great peace country. I admire you. Brother Jing is kind. In order to repay the kindness of the sect, you have to endure humiliation. I understand that. But dare I ask, Brother Jing, what did my sworn sister do to you? Why did you disregard her life and involve her in a dangerous situation?" He had wanted to ask Jing Chen this question a long time ago. What right did he have to cut off all ties with Jing Chen just because he wanted to? Did he think that Yushu should obediently submit to him just because he wanted to get back together? No matter how dignified his reason was, it couldn't hide the essence of taking advantage of her. Men always had such a self-righteous drawback. They thought that they could decide everything. A selfish man was more arbitrary than a selfish woman. Seeing Jing Chen reminded him of himself 3 years ago. He wholeheartedly wanted to marry the 10th princess, but he didn't consider whether she was willing or not. In the end, he ended up in an irreversible situation. As a man, Shui Rui didn't think that he had the right to blame Jing Chen. But as Yushu's man, he couldn't tolerate Jing Chen's covetous heart. Or is brother Jing really naive to think that as long as Shu agrees to marry and have children with you, everything will be fine? Although Jing Chen was used to Yushu's cold words, he still felt that Shui Rui's bluntness was a little harsh. The things that he had always wanted to deceive himself and others became clearer. That day at the bottom of the imperial tombs, he had his doubts, but he still chose to believe De Dian's words. De Dian had told him who the person who broke his life was. Apart from kindness and righteousness in his heart, the person he liked was Xiaoyu. He was happy to have such a chance to be with her again. She doesn't owe me anything. I'm the one who let her down. You didn't let me down. I've said that we're even. Yushu's voice was flat. She had long passed the stage of anger and unwillingness. Now Jing Chen was no longer a friend to her, but he wasn't an enemy either. Hearing this, Jing Chen just turned to look at her. His handsome face didn't show much emotion. Seeing this, Shui Rui stopped and didn't continue to be aggressive. Instead, he changed the topic and brought it to the murder case in Taishu Shuyuan. The murderer who killed Zhan Shuyuan has not been identified. It's obvious that those people's goal is to target you, the Scourge of Dawn. That's why the woman close to you was implicated. I'm afraid that their next target is Shu. For her safety, I'd like to trouble Brother Jing with something. What is it? Go ahead. Recently, His Majesty may send more people to protect Shu. If they mention it in front of you, I hope you can refuse on behalf of Shu. As for the excuse, I've already thought of it for you. Just say that Shu knows the death-severing technique and is not in danger of losing her life. You'll also protect her from the side. There's no need to do anything unnecessary. Originally, this wasn't what Shui Rui wanted to ask Jing Chen to cooperate with. Once Zhan Shuyuan died, he was afraid that the emperor would disregard Yushu's life and arrange the marriage between Jing Chen and her ahead of time, using her to lose her life first. That was why he originally wanted to remind Jing Chen not to agree to their marriage and delay it. But now the situation had taken a turn for the better. Yushu's performance at the Aquatic and Continent Conference had caused Emperor Zhao Qing to re-evaluate her weight. A title bestowed by the emperor spoke volumes. They wouldn't be in a hurry to send Yushu to her death. On the contrary, they would send more people to protect her. I don't understand. Jing Chen frowned. Why did you refuse? Yushu also didn't understand why Shui Rui was doing this. Wasn't it a good thing to have more people to protect her life? But she didn't question it. She believed that Shui Rui must have his reasons for making such a request. Shui Rui quickly gave this reason. Historically, the Emperor of Dan Kingdom has a group of secretive personal guards that follow and protect the Emperor. They are not dispatched by the military and there are only a few dozen of them. But in terms of martial arts, there are many people who can compete with Brother Jing. They are also very good at hiding and they are loyal. So since the founding of Dan Kingdom, although there have been many assassinations, there has never been a successful assassination. If my guess is correct, the Emperor will send more people to protect Shu in secret this time. He will definitely choose people from these personal guards. As Shui Rui spoke, he glanced at Yushu and said, if you don't want people to watch you when you eat, sleep or go to the toilet and report your every move to the Emperor, it's best to refuse. Yushu had too many secrets. If any one of them was leaked, it would be enough for her to lose her head. These personal guards were not protective talismans for her, but talismans that would lead to her death. Yushu's expression changed. She unconsciously changed her posture and looked at Jing Chen. Her expression clearly showed resistance. Jing Chen lowered his head and thought for a moment. He said, okay, I will pay attention. Regardless of whether the Emperor and the Great Advisor mention it to me, once I find that there are masters around her monitoring, I will come out to stop them. Better be so. Shui Rui said this and turned to Yushu and said, don't you have something to tell Brother Jing? Yushu didn't expect that it would be her turn so soon. She took a deep breath and looked at Jing Chen, who had been deceived for more than a decade. She couldn't help but feel pity in her heart. She unconsciously lowered her voice. Chapter 613. Yushu didn't tell Jing Chen about the father and son of the Xian family in detail. She just pushed everything to the death judgment magic. I accidentally learned the birth date of Yunhua Yi's son. After using the death judgment magic, I found out that he is still alive. I have calculated it several times and it can't be wrong. Jing Chen sat there motionlessly. His face was full of fear and his whole body seemed to be frozen. She didn't know if he heard the latter part of Yushu's explanation. Yushu could imagine the impact he had felt. Ever since he was young, he had known that he was a disaster. Everyone around him had told him that his parents had been cursed by his Kata star. He grew up in self-blame and lived alone for nearly 20 years. Suddenly one day he was told that his father was still alive and well. It must be hard for him to accept it. Yushu turned her head and wanted to exchange glances with Shui Rui, but she saw that he was looking at Jing Chen with a thoughtful expression. She didn't know what he was thinking. After a while, Jing Chen opened his mouth. His suppressed voice had a touch of hoarseness. "Thank you for telling me." Normally this was a good opportunity to slander Emperor Zhao Qing and Detidian. But when Yushu saw his expression, her lips moved and the words that came to her mouth became, "No need. It's good that you don't suspect that I lied to you." Jing Chen shook his head and stood up with his hand on the armrest. "Forgive me for not staying for long. I will leave first." Yushu nodded and turned to look at Shui Rui. After hesitating, she stood up and said, "I will walk you to the door. Brother Jing, take care." Shui Rui sat there without moving. He watched them leave. Coming down from the third floor at the corner of the stairs, Jing Chen suddenly stopped. He didn't look back and said in a low voice, "Why do they all lie to me?" What he had seen and heard since he was young was true. Yushu didn't know how to answer. Even if the person in her heart was no longer him, she couldn't help but feel sad for him. Maybe it's to achieve a certain goal or maybe it's because of some difficulties. Yushu raised her hand and was about to put it on his shoulder when she paused and put it down again. She was not good at comforting people, so she said, "No matter what, he is still alive. Isn't that a good thing?" "Yeah." With a faint chuckle, Jing Chen turned around and looked at her with an unreadable expression. "At least he's alive, isn't he?" Yushu sent Jing Chen back to the courtyard. The moment she raised her head, she saw Shui Rui who was waiting for her at the bottom of the corridor on the first floor. She couldn't help but quicken her steps and walk up to him. "Did he leave?" "Yes, let's go." Shui Rui reached out his hand and held onto her slightly cold hand. He squeezed it lightly before turning around and pulling her into the house. "Have you forgiven him?" "Shu, don't play dumb." "Jing Chen, he's actually very pitiful." "Yes, I think so too." The two of them disappeared behind the closed door. After the water and land conference, greeting cards floated into the door of Yushu's house like snowflakes. Some people heard from somewhere that Yushu's new house was built on Baochang Street. They surrounded both ends and people came to see her all day long. Yushu had the experience of becoming famous at the hibiscus banquet last time. Early in the morning, she instructed the two mansions to keep the cards and gifts, and invite the guests in for tea. If they asked about her, they said she was not at home. But no matter how she hid, she couldn't hide from some weirdos. As a matter of fact, on this day she left the house before the sun rose, but was blocked at the main entrance of her house. Not knowing where, two figures rushed out, and with two putong sounds they knelt down in front of her. If not for Lu Hong and Su Qing blocking in front of her, they would have knocked into her feet. "I'm Zhou Min. I've admired Mr. Yu for a long time. I'm willing to take you as my master. Please accept me. In the future I'll treat my master as my second parent and be filial to you. I'm Wang Sheng. My ancestors have learned the Yi for 3 generations. I can endure hardships and work hard. Please, Miaoling Messenger, accept me as your disciple. I'll definitely study hard and pass on your mantle." 2 black lines appeared on Yushu's forehead. She thought to herself, where did these 2 shameless people come from? They looked like they were in their 30s and they dared to say they wanted to be her son. And the one who learned the Yi for 3 generations, who wants him to inherit the mantle. It was the first time Lu Hong and Su Qing encountered such a situation. They didn't know how to deal with it, so they turned to look at Yushu and waited for her to speak. "Ahem, both of you please get up. My master has ordered that I'm not allowed to accept disciples." The 2 looked at each other, unwilling to give up. What about the registered disciple? Does the adopted son want one? It took a lot of effort to get rid of the 2 shameless people. When Yushu arrived at the Celestial Commissioner office, it was already dawn. She almost missed the roll call. From the moment she entered the door, people kept greeting her warmly. There were also some thick-skinned people who chatted with her from the bottom of the bell tower all the way to the outside of the Celestial Commissioner office before leaving reluctantly. Yushu wiped away the cold sweat on her forehead and sat down as soon as she entered the door. Xialan quickly served a cup of tea and stood in front of her, saying, "Darren, did you go out late today? There is no need to rush. Next time if you come late and don't have the time to order, this lowly official will go and greet my classmates from the secretariat." "Oh, don't mention it. I got up early anyway." Yushu told him about what happened when she went out in the morning. At the end she sighed with emotion. "Fortunately I ran fast. Otherwise I would have 2 adopted sons today." Ah. Xialan laughed in spite of herself and poured another cup of tea for her. She said, "This kind of wishful thinking can be found everywhere. They are not willing to put their feet on the ground and only want to ascend to the heavens in a single bound. Darren, if you meet them again in the future, there is no need to be nice to them." After that he asked her, "You still have an empty place for an assistant. Have you chosen a good person? It's almost the end of the month. I'll fill it up quickly so that I can make it in time for this month's salary." Yushu said, "Yes, I'll write a letter. Send someone to Taisher Library to find him." "Yes." Yushu got up and walked to her office. She turned her head and glanced at the stairs. She asked Xialan, "Is the right commander here?" "Milord Jing took a leave today. He seems to be unwell. I sent someone to check on him in the morning." Oh. The atmosphere in Taisher Library was a bit gloomy these 2 days. Paper could not wrap up fire. The news of Zhang Shuiyuan's death had spread. The students who came to class during the day were all talking about the aquatic and land conference that had just ended a few days ago. But in private they were talking about the death. Not many people were in the mood to read. When the Celestial Commissioner sent someone to find Wen Xiao, and he was sitting in a corner of the ink study. There was no class today. He was surrounded by students who had come here to slack off. Amidst the whispers he was grinding ink and copying a book. When he received Yushu's handwritten letter, he saw the only line on it, "As you wish." He was stunned for a moment before he recovered. He lowered his head and carefully folded the paper, putting it in his pocket. He asked the official to wait outside. Wen Xiao, and went inside to pack his things. Under the puzzled gazes of some people, he left with someone else. Only his brisk footsteps betrayed his current mood. After he left, someone in the study said suspiciously, "Hey, that person just now seemed to be the Celestial Commissioner's man, right?" At dusk, the sound of a bell came from outside the window. Yushu stretched and put down her brush. On the table in front of her was a thick stack of documents. More than half of them were the official marriage documents that the Kunling Bureau had handled in recent years. The other half were the marriage documents that had been piled up in the past 2 months waiting for approval. Wen Xiao En, who had just been brought over in the morning, was sitting at a small table opposite her. He was copying and organizing a pile of dusty documents. He hadn't even changed out of his Taisher Library uniform when she pulled him in. Yushu's job could be said to be leisurely. She only had to wait for the brush supervisor and signature officer to deliver the approved documents to her. She would look through them and stamp them. Yushu didn't want to be lazy. Since she had come to the Celestial Commissioner, she had to make good use of the real power in her hands. She couldn't be a decoration and waste resources. Therefore, the most important thing was to first understand the big and small affairs of the Kunling Bureau and investigate the past records. She didn't want to be a figurehead without knowing it. Xialan and Ren Jiao looked good on the surface, but there was no knowing what was in a person's heart. Who knew if they would play tricks on her behind her back? Yushu looked at the sky outside the window and said to Wen Xiao, "And don't work. Let's stop here today." Wen Xiao and stopped his brush and stood up. "Darren, you can go back first. I will finish writing these down before leaving." Yushu naturally wouldn't discourage his enthusiasm. She waved her hand to let him continue. She called Lu Hong in and put the 8-catty copper official seal into a box to take away. The Celestial Commissioner had guards patrolling at night. There were also people who would lock the official seal in a cabinet. However, most of the high-ranking officials who had guards would carefully carry the seal with them. "Darren, take care." Outside the Kunling Bureau, a middle-aged man stood not far away. He was wearing a dark red official robe with 2 blue clouds embroidered on his shoulders. He looked in the direction of the courtyard door and saw Yushu coming out with someone. He didn't hurry to go forward. Instead, he waited for them to come closer before he cupped his hands and said, "May I ask if you are Yunuyu of the Kunling Bureau?" Yushu looked at him and didn't know him. Judging from his official robe, he should be a 5th-rank official. However, she hadn't seen this person at the aquatic conference. That's me. And this Darren is? The man lowered his hand and introduced himself. Celestial Envoy Master of Ceremonies Chui Shui. Yu Shu raised an eyebrow. Chui Shui? Chui Xian's father? So it's Darren Chui. I'm sorry. It's me who has offended you. Chui Shui forced a smile on his face. Yu Shu could see that he was uncomfortable. Thinking that he was here for the gambling debts of the Chui family's gambling house, she smiled. Why is Darren Chui looking for me? This? I heard from my daughter yesterday that I offended Darren Yu at the gambling house a few days ago. I taught my daughter not to speak, so I apologized to Darren Yu. As Chui Shui said this, he lowered his head and bowed to Yu Shu. Yu Shu moved to the side and sneered in her heart. What did he mean by hearing yesterday that there was a gambling debt of tens of thousands of taels? Were the Chui family deaf? It was obvious that they were planning to let it go when she didn't say anything. Chapter 6:14. It wasn't much different from the analysis that Shui Rui had given her earlier. Chui Shui didn't look for her today for the sake of denying it, and he'd instead come to apologize and plead for leniency. 60,000 taels of silver was not a small sum. The first branch of the Chui family had to rely on the second branch, so they could not take out this sum of money to make up for it. That day at the gambling house, Chui Xen had impulsively stopped Yu Shu and Jiang Mia from leaving. It was not because she wanted to renege on the bet, but because she knew her second uncle's character. Even if this debt was placed on the head of the first branch, the public would not forgive it. Aristocratic families wanted face, but it was Chui Shui who held the position of Celestial Commissioner, not Chui Min. The first branch would lose face, but the second branch would have to compensate. Official Yu, please don't misunderstand. The Chui family will definitely repay this debt. It's just that the amount is too large, so we won't be able to collect it in a short time. Could Official Yu please wait for a few more days and allow my family to take a breather? Chui Shui looked like an honest person and did not complain in front of Yu Shu. He almost bluntly told her that the money was not enough and she had to pay it back slowly. After listening to Shui Rui's advice, Yu Shu did not intend to make things difficult for him. While Chui Shui was feeling uneasy, her expression softened and she said, "It's said that the aristocratic families of the 12 prefectures are rich and powerful, but I think every family has its own difficulties. Never mind, Official Chui and I are both officials in the prison. Since you have spoken, I will not make things difficult for you. When you have enough money you can pay it back." She paused and then said, "Although your daughter gave me an IOU for 60,000 taels of silver, I took some away from the gambling house that day. Official Chui just needs to pay me 40,000 taels at that time." Since she wanted to do a favor, she could not be too stingy. What, you're asking her why she did not simply forget this gambling debt? What a joke, that little girl Chui Xn dared to plot against her at the Hibiscus Gentleman's banquet. If she did not take this opportunity to teach her a lesson, she would think that she, Yu, was someone who could be easily offended. Chui Shui breathed a sigh of relief and raised a hand to thank her. "I will bring my daughter to visit another day to apologize." When they returned to Wangji Tower for dinner that night, Yu Shu told Shui Rui about this matter. The latter smiled and said, "Chui Shui is indeed sensible. Otherwise, such an honest person would not be able to squeeze into the Celestial Commissioner's office." Yu Shu felt that there was a hidden meaning in his words, so she looked a little puzzled. Therefore Shui Rui told her, "You still don't understand the ways of the world in the officialdom. If you hadn't been bestowed the title by His Majesty, how could he have found you so quickly?" Up until now, Yu Shu did not feel that the title that Emperor Zhaoqing had bestowed upon her was anything special. It was not enough for her to eat or drink. Seeing the confusion on her face, Shui Rui shook his head and laughed. He pulled one of her hands to his knee, patted it, and said to her in a light and slow voice, "His Majesty has been on the throne for 13 years. Although there are no great achievements, the country is peaceful. However, the princes have all grown up, and the appointment of the crown prince will not be delayed for a few days. Our Dayan is not like the previous dynasties. We do not like to pass on the throne during a funeral. Therefore, once the crown prince is appointed, it will take at most 8 to 10 years for the new emperor to succeed the throne. If the dragon's body is unwell, it will only take 3 to 5 years. His Majesty, as the ruler of a country, has the country under his control. He does not lack anything, but he lacks 1 or 2 deeds that can be recorded in the history books. Now that you used the true dragon command to summon rain at the Water and Land Conference, you have confirmed His Majesty's reputation as a wise ruler. How could His Majesty not be pleased? Therefore, not only did he bestow you with a title, he will also vigorously spread this matter to the people. It will not be long before everyone in the world knows that His Majesty is a wise ruler and can summon rain. At this point, his eyes looked at her faintly and his tone became more serious. And you, the meowling messenger, have become the best proof of a wise ruler. As long as His Majesty is on the throne, no one can touch you. To put it bluntly, this title bestowed by the emperor is equivalent to a golden ticket to be exempted from death. Yushu's eyes widened. After listening to Shui Rui's explanation, only then did she understand the trick of flattering him that day. In order to make Emperor Zhaoqing value her life, she had unintentionally exchanged a death exemption card for herself. Therefore, in Anling City, as long as one understands this, no one will want to offend you. Shui Rui looked at her as if she had just come to a realization, and could not help but laugh. He knew that when she was bluffing, she did not think so far ahead at all. This was called a lucky hit. Ha ha ha. Shui Rui unhurriedly poured a bucket of cold water on her. Don't get happy too early. The murderer that caused the deaths of Chao Yuling and Zhan Shuiyuan wouldn't care if the emperor cherished your little life or not. Yushu just grinned but closed her mouth again. When she thought of the 2 lives in Taisher Shuyuan, her joy was diluted by half. How about I start to strengthen my body and practice martial arts tomorrow? If I really meet a bad person, I will have the power to fight back. Yushu seriously suggested. Jing Chen's martial arts are first class, but he was also killed on the way to the capital. Do you think you can be better than him if you start to practice martial arts now? Shui Rui laughed at her whimsical idea. Forget it, it is better to do some fortune-telling to be safe. Seeing her hesitation, Shui Rui did not continue to attack her. His expression relaxed, he rubbed her soft fingers and whispered. I am here, what are you afraid of? No matter how cunning and vicious the murderer behind the scenes was, he would find them sooner or later and give her peace of mind. 3 days after the Land and Water Conference, the Japanese who were thrown into the prison for interrogation finally found out the truth under the joint interrogation of the Supreme Court, the Ministry of Justice, and the Swan Temple. Not only was the trick of Nbakue's resurrection fake, but the rain that Ida Maki summoned was also a trick. As for why the Japanese wanted to trick the Diaoyu Island from the hands of the Dan dynasty, there was also an answer. Wu Huaiyan stood in front of Emperor Zhaoqing and reported respectfully, the Diaoyu Island is close to Ryukyu country, and there are flat beaches along the island that are convenient for ships to dock. The Japanese General Ashikaga is ambitious and built a large ship with water cannons, intending to attack Ryukyu. According to the records of the Swan Temple, Ryukyu used to belong to the Japanese in the previous dynasty, so they came up with a trick and disguised themselves as 2 young masters to borrow land from the Dan dynasty. The left and right ministers were listening quietly at the side. Emperor Zhaoqing sat behind the dragon table, his face gloomy and his eyes flickered. But to rule a small place, a mere warrior dares to have such ambition. Does he really think that I am old and muddle-headed? Shui Lingnan and Yin Tianho lowered their heads. Hearing the emperor's words, they did not know if he was talking about the Japanese general or someone else. Come, summon the Duke of Xianjing Yao Ying, the Defender General of the State Feng Yuan, the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War, and the others to the Hall of Announcing Government for discussion. Emperor Zhaoqing obviously did not intend to take this lying down. He immediately summoned a group of ministers to the palace to discuss how to deal with the Japanese. At the same time, Yushu, who was sent to the gate by Shui Rui, saw the steward sent by Lu Tan as soon as she entered the house. Chapter 6:15. After Zhan Shuiyuan's death, the Dao-carrying tower of the Taisher Library was sealed. Every day there were officials from the Supreme Court standing guard outside, and no one was allowed to approach. Zhan Shuiyuan's body was taken back by a servant of the Zhan family in the capital. The Zhan family's ancestral home was in Jiangxi, and it would take at least a month for them to come to Anling after receiving the bad news. According to the coroner's autopsy, Zhan Shuiyuan died in the early morning of the 15th of July. The murder weapon was a rope, and near the well where her body was thrown, Jing Chen's scholar's lot had fallen. Shui Rui personally took the statements of several students who were familiar with her and confirmed that the night before she was killed, Zhan Shuiyuan did not return to the Zhan family's guest house in the capital, but stayed alone in the women's dormitory. In addition, the gatekeeper of the library had seen Zhan Shuiyuan enter the top floor with the scholar's lot. The guards in charge of patrolling the courtyard unanimously said that in the early morning of the day of the crime, they did not see any suspicious people near the Dao-carrying tower. Other than that, there were no other reliable clues. As for the two biggest suspects, the servant who discovered the corpse and the gatekeeper who hid it, there were people who could prove that they were not there. The gatekeeper was already in his 50s and didn't look like someone who could carry a heavy load. The servant who swept the floor was a skinny and dry young man. Thus, this became another unsolved case. Shui Rui came to the Taisher library again that morning with only one constable. He entered the library and slowly went from the first floor to the third floor. There were rows of bookshelves and cabinets on each floor. It was too easy for the murderer to hide among them without being discovered. According to his speculation, Zhang Shuiyuan had sneaked in before dawn. Then the murderer, who had hidden behind a bookshelf, attacked her from behind, strangled her with a rope and carried her body downstairs, throwing her body into the well to delay the time when the body was found and find a chance to escape. There were many suspicious points in this. For example, there was a lock outside the library, and the key was with the gatekeeper. The library would only open after 7 to allow students to enter. How did Zhang Shuiyuan enter without a sound? For example, where did Zhang Shuiyuan get the academician's signature from Jing Qin? Did she sneak into Tibet to find something? These questions could only be answered by the dead Zhang Shuiyuan. However, Shui Rui knew. It was the same as how Chao Yuling was killed. Zhang Shuiyuan was also lured to the crime scene by the murderer or his accomplice, and then kill them. In these two cases, the murderer was frighteningly cautious and there were no witnesses. The crime scene had been cleaned up neatly, and there was not a single footprint left on the ground. He could not find out what Zhang Shuiyuan was looking for before he died. Therefore, Shui Rui was sure that the academician's stick that fell by the well was not left behind by the murderer when he was moving the body. Instead, it was a clue that the murderer deliberately left behind, and it pointed to Jing Qin. This time it was not to shift the blame. The murderer's intention was to tell those who knew that he was killing because of the great calamity. Once the emperor heard of such a secretive method, it was impossible for him not to be anxious. The biggest possibility was that he would arrange the marriage between Jing Qin and Yu Shu as soon as possible. In this way, Yu Shu would be completely exposed. Cautious, smart, and confident. Shui Rui tried to figure out the characteristics of the murderer, and a vague image appeared in his mind. His eyes kept flashing and he was actually a little excited. It was said that meeting one's match is a happy thing in life. For him, meeting a smart and cunning murderer was also rare. "Sir, did you find anything else?" the constable asked expectantly. Because of this case, the few of them had not been able to sleep well for several days. Shui Rui stood by the window on the third floor and looked down. He just happened to see the well. He turned his head and said to his subordinate, "This place has been checked inside and out. There is no other suspicious place. Tomorrow remove the ban. There is no need to send people to guard it." Yes. Shui Rui turned back and swept his eyes across the mountains of books in front of him. His eyes turned black and he thought to himself, "You hide well, wait for me to catch you." Yu Shu went to the newly built Jing Wangfu and saw Lu Tan there. She originally thought that Lu Tan found an excuse to rope in her, the meowing messenger, who knew that he really wanted her to look at the mansion. From the beginning to the end, it was all about geomancy, and there was no other topic. Yu Shu did not come in vain. Jing Wangfu's geomancy was definitely good. The Ministry of Works provided manpower and the Celestial Commissioner sent 2 great E-Masters who were proficient in geomancy to participate in the design of the mansion's geomancy. It was a standard mansion, not bad at all. During this trip, she looked at the big and small courtyards. With Lu Tan's explanation, it was effortless for her to secretly learn a thing or two. Of course, Lu Tan only took her to see the layout of the outer courtyard. He wouldn't let her enter the inner courtyard. "Lianfang, what do you think of the construction of Ben Wang's Jing Wangfu? Wang Yi asked me to come here, but I am embarrassed. In terms of arithmetic, there are not many in Enling City who can compare to me. But in terms of geomancy, I am not even good enough to carry the shoes of the masters." Yu Shu shook her head self-deprecatingly. Ever since that incident on Chinese Valentine's Day, she didn't pretend to be so distant and polite in front of Lu Tan. After all, he was her best friend's future husband. As long as Lu Tan didn't try to recruit her as a younger brother, there was no harm in being polite. Lu Tan smiled slightly, "But your ability to call the wind and summon the rain, no one in the world can do that." "You can't say it like that, there's still my Shifu." "Your Shifu is probably an immortal, how can he be compared to mortals?" Yu Shu didn't have the patience to flatter anyone and said, "Wang Yi has been recuperating on Mount Longhu, how many old immortals have you seen? I've often heard people say that the old spiritual masters of that sect, some have lived for hundreds of years. Lu Tan shook his head. How can there be hundreds of years? The oldest elder of the sect only passed his 99th birthday last year. Yushu really wanted to ask him about what happened on Mount Longhu, but she was afraid that Lu Tan would sense something, so she changed the topic. The two chatted for a while and a servant came over to whisper something. Lu Tan's expression changed and he turned to Yushu and said apologetically, I originally wanted to invite cousin to have lunch with you and taste the live fish sent from the south this morning, but there is an urgent matter, so Ben Wang has to go out. Yushu tactfully said, Wang Yi, if you have something to do you can go. I'll go back now. Zhuo Degu is investigating a case so he probably won't have time to eat and drink with us. She took her leave. Lu Tan wanted to personally see her off, but Yushu refused and was sent out by the steward. As soon as she left, Lu Tan frowned and turned to ask the servant, Tell me what happened just now again. The servant lowered his head and said, Someone saw the 11th prince in a Chu compound on Chenyuan Street last night. Lu Tan's expression was uncertain. In the case of the headless imperial envoy, Lu Yi had lost to Ning Wang's craftiness and had been driven out of the capital by Emperor Zhao Qing in a fit of anger. It had only been a few days, and he had come back in defiance of the imperial edict? As for Ning Wang, he was probably still, obediently, facing the wall in Ningguang Fu. Master. Send someone to invite Sir Situ over from the compound. Yes. Then send someone to Chenyuan Street to keep watch and confirm. Chapter 616. The next day, Jing W. N. Ji Fu's housewarming banquet. Lu Tan was conferred the title of Jing W. N. Ji after the Shuangyang meeting. The Wangfu had been built for 3 months. For today's banquet, preparations had started half a month in advance. Yushu came a bit late. The Celestial Commissioner was not far from Jing W. Ji Fu, but she had to return to Wangji Tower to change out of her official robes before taking a carriage here. Considering that her status was different now, Yushu did not dress like a normal woman. Instead, she wore an apricot yellow gown with a belt, a fragrant pouch and jade pendant on her waist. She wore half boots, her hair was tied up high, revealing her forehead. She only wore a jade gourd hairpin that dyed her eyebrows. Her neat and tidy appearance made her look more energetic and beautiful than wearing a long dress. Outside the gates of the Wangfu, there were already red lanterns and colored silk. There was an endless stream of carriages and horses in front of the gates. It was very lively. Yushu did not have an appointment with anyone. At the gates, she did meet 1 or 2 Celestial Commissioner officials, but they were only nodding acquaintances. But now that she was famous, even if they weren't familiar, there were many people willing to come forward to talk, regardless of whether her response was cold or warm. But once she entered the banquet hall, it was not good for these people to follow her. Because the seats were different, Yushu was personally led to a round table by the manager in charge of welcoming guests in the garden. Unsurprisingly, she saw many familiar faces, and one of them was loudly talking. At that time, the entire Fengqing Palace was silent. Only a voice from the Celestial Commissioner's side could be heard shouting, "Are you bullying our Celestial Commissioner for not having anyone? Let me show you the true power of calling the wind and summoning the rain." Everyone turned to look. Do you know who stood up? The people sitting at this table were all young people of illustrious backgrounds. Shui Rui hadn't arrived yet. Feng Zhaomiao was holding a pair of silver sandalwood chopsticks in one hand and vividly telling a story that had recently become popular in the tea houses and wineries in the capital. He didn't notice Yushu, who was walking up from behind him. But when the others saw her, some held back their laughter and did not remind her. Others opened their mouths to call out, "Lianfang Gunyang." That's right. Feng Zhaomiao's chopsticks hit the table and said excitedly, "Isn't it her?" Yushu raised her eyebrows and folded her arms. She stood silently behind Feng Zhaomiao, waiting for him to continue. "If my father didn't tell me personally, I wouldn't believe it. We all know Lotus Feng. Which one of you can see that she has such immortal means? Let me tell you, when I first met her, I thought she was just an ordinary person. She was not famous and had no family background. He doesn't look smart at all." Seeing that Feng Zhaomiao was getting more and more unreliable, a kind-hearted person at the table finally coughed twice and interrupted him. He stood up and smiled at the person behind him. "Miaoling messenger, you're here. We've been waiting for you for quite a while. Come and have a seat." The person who spoke was the good guy Qimingxiu. Following that, several people at the table stood up to greet her. It wasn't that they wanted to be reserved and distant, but because of the warm title bestowed on Yushu. It was indeed effective. Feng Zhaomiao stiffened his neck and turned his head. He saw Yu Shu standing behind him with a smile on her face. He quivered and quickly stood up, laughing dryly. Lian Feng, you're here. Look, he can't even speak fluently. Yu Shu also ignored him. She nodded to everyone and sat on the empty seat next to him. There was another seat on the side. It was just left for Shui Rui. Many people around them were quietly sizing her up. Regardless of whether they had seen her before or not, from Qi Mingxiu's words, they knew that this elegant young woman was the Miaoling emissary appointed by the emperor. Speak. Why don't you continue? Yu Shu tilted her head. She smiled at Feng Zhaomiao and said, so I wasn't a smart person in your eyes. Feng Zhaomiao scratched his head and smiled apologetically. He picked up the wine pot and poured her a cup of wine, saying, I was just saying it casually, don't take it to heart. This cup of wine is my apology to you. Of course Yu Shu wouldn't take it to heart. If Feng Zhaomiao was a coward, why would Shui Rui have such a deep friendship with him? So she took his cup of wine. Her almond-shaped eyes flashed and she shook her sleeve to cover her mouth. She tilted her head back and drank. Her slender neck arched and her chin half raised. Her posture was unspeakably beautiful. There was no lack of youngsters at the table who were looking at her in a daze. When the people at the table saw Yu Shu's situation, their mood was somewhat complicated. Just a few months ago, this little girl was only taken care of by Shui Rui. Although they were courteous to her on the surface, in fact, she wasn't worth their attention. Who would have thought that today even they would have to be courteous to her? Rui Lin raised his wine cup and said, Come, the host has not arrived yet, let us first borrow a place to congratulate the Lotus Chamber on being conferred the title. When the golden seal is issued, you can hold a banquet and don't forget to invite us to try our luck. When little Juyi spoke, everyone agreed. A few people who knew Yu Shu also came up to join in the fun. These people had sent invitations to Yu Shu's residence before, but it was like a stone sinking into the sea. Now that they finally caught her, how could they let her go? Not long after, Yu Shu was offered 4 or 5 cups of wine. Because they had good intentions, she didn't hesitate to refuse. But the wine at the banquet was slightly spicy. She had been busy in the Celestial Commissioner's office for the whole afternoon and had an empty stomach. When the cold wine entered her stomach, it was inevitable that she would feel uncomfortable. Seeing that more and more people were surrounding her, and cup after cup of wine was handed to her endlessly, she couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. She secretly frowned. Just as she was about to drink another 2 cups, an arm stretched out from her shoulder. The moon-blue sleeves were embroidered with pine and cypress patterns. The slender fingers brushed past the back of her hand and took the cup of wine in front of her. At the same time, a sweet chuckle sounded behind her. Why did you take advantage of my absence to bully my little sister's wine? Seeing who was standing behind Yu Shu, everyone was speechless. They all tactfully touched their noses and took their wine cups away. Yu Shu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She turned around and raised her head, and what she saw was Shui Rui's refined and handsome face. She couldn't help but narrow her eyes, and she thought happily in her heart. This man is very good. Shui Rui consciously sat on the empty seat next to Yu Shu. Rui Lin smiled and said, Brother Rui, you are wrong to say that. We are congratulating Miss Lianfeng. Why did you say that we deliberately made her drink? Lianfeng, you also come and judge, did we bully you just now? Yu Shu glanced at him. Why did she feel that this young Lord Rui's words were strange? Shui Rui didn't wait for Yu Shu to speak. He put the wine cup in his hand on the table and said, You also have to pick the time. What day is it today? It's better not to be a noisy guest. Yu Shu suddenly came back to her senses. Yes, today is a happy day for Lu Tan to leave the palace and start a career. She is here to drink a cup of wine. Being complimented by others, when Lu Tan comes and sees it later, how can he be happy? Was Rui Lin's action unintentional or intentional? Yu Shu's eyes were slightly cold. When she was about to speak, she heard Feng Zhaomiao said, Your Highness is here. With a call in the courtyard, everyone stopped talking and turned to look at the entrance of the banquet. They saw a man in a purple robe with golden wings on his head. Lu Tan, with a jade ribbon on his shoulder, walked in with his hands behind his back, surrounded by several palace servants. And the people on his left and right sides were also eye-catching. The current right commander Jing Chen was recognized by most people, but the delicate woman sitting on the wooden wheelchair on the other side was unfamiliar to many people. Yu Shu saw Shui Yun sitting in a wheelchair and frowned. Some unpleasant memories surfaced in his mind. Deep into the night, the last wave of guests came out of Jing Wangfu in groups. Everyone said their goodbyes at the door. Lu Tan personally saw them off. After a whole night of good wine and food, singing and dancing, the men drank a little too much. One by one, they were helped onto the carriage by the servants who caught up to the door. Yushu, Shuirui, Jingchen and Shui Yun were left behind. Many thanks for your hospitality, Your Highness. We will also leave now. The road is dark, take care. Lu Tan was clearly the one who drank the most tonight. Even though he had drunk some hangover tea halfway through, when the night wind blew, his fair face became bright red. The Princess Fu's soft sedan was first carried over. The maids pushed the wooden wheelchair to the side of the steps. Yushu watched coldly as Jing Chen easily carried Shui Yun and sent her to the side of the sedan. When she turned, Shui Yun faced her, her chin obediently rested on Jing Chen's shoulder. Her bright eyes met Yushu's gaze for the first time tonight. Yushu and Shui Yun sat at the same table the whole night. There were a few people between them. They didn't say a word, pretending that they didn't know each other. Yushu was still wondering if this little shimmy knew her identity as the one who broke her fate when she heard Shui Yun suddenly speak, Lianfang Gunyang. At her call, Jing Chen's footsteps paused. His back was slightly stiff but no one noticed. Shui Rui, who was whispering to the thin Lu Tan, shifted his attention. He faintly glanced at the female disciple of Mount Longhu that he didn't have much interaction with. Yushu only responded with one word, N. I have some private things to talk to you. Because my legs are inconvenient, can you come to the Princess Fu to find me tomorrow? Shui Yun's voice was soft and weak. It seemed like she was begging. Yushu didn't give her any face. She coldly said, I have official business to do. I don't have time to accept your invitation. Shui Yun stubbornly stared at her and said, It's an important matter. It's related to you. I'm not interested. Yushu didn't want to talk to her anymore. She cupped her hands towards Lu Tan and strode to Shui Rui's carriage across the street. Lao Chui quickly jumped off the carriage and opened the curtain for her. Shui Yun turned her head and stared at her back. The next moment she was stuffed into the sedan by Jing Chen. Then he jumped on the horse and left first. From the beginning to the end he didn't say a word to Yushu. Lu Tan confusedly turned his head and asked Shui Rui, What happened to them? Shui Rui said, Nothing. It's windy. Your Highness, please go in. Then he waved his hand at Lao Chui. When the carriage got close he went in. When the carriage and the sedan left, Lu Tan's eyes suddenly became clear. He thoughtfully stared at the direction where they left. In the carriage Shui Rui said to Yushu, who was depressed, Tell me, what happened between you and Shui Yun? I think there's a hidden meaning in her words. You don't like her. This could be traced back to the time when Yushu and Shui Yun were kidnapped by Prince Ning. Shui Yun's scheme made her suffer a loss. At that time Yushu hid it from Shui Rui. She didn't want to bring it up to embarrass herself. So she snorted and said, I just don't like her. She thinks she's smart. The words thinks she's smart were used to describe people like Shui Yun. If it wasn't for her, she and Jing Chen wouldn't be in this situation. At least they would still be friends. Alright, what's the matter with Ruelin? Yushu tried to change the topic. I think there's something wrong with him tonight. His words are also weird. Shui Rui shook his head. He's aiming at me. Aren't you two good friends? Chapter 617. When they returned to the princess residence, Jing Chen sent Shui Yun back to the courtyard. He stood by the window and didn't leave. The servants sensed that the atmosphere wasn't right, so they silently brought in hot tea and hot water. The two maids were about to help Shui Yun wash up. They had just wrung out a handkerchief when they heard Jing Chen's cold voice, All of you go out of the courtyard. No one is allowed to stay. Soon only the two of them were left in the room. It was so quiet outside that not even a cat could be heard. What do you want to do now? Jing Chen turned his head and coldly glanced at Shui Yun. He didn't plan on taking her to the banquet today, but he didn't know who told Lu Tan that someone from the prince's residence would come early in the morning. In order to prevent her from scheming behind his back, he could only take her with him and watch over her. He knew that Shui Yun had the Baigan heart orifice, so he didn't say a word to Yushu the whole night. He was afraid that she would see the clues and hide it from him. Shui Yun wasn't angry at his questioning and asked him back, Senior Marshal Brother, what do you think I want to do? I just want to invite Miss Yu to come over and talk to me to relieve my boredom. I'm not familiar with the people in the capital. Other than you and Zhongyun, she's the only girl I know. Of course, Jing Chen didn't believe her words. He looked at the weak and helpless young girl in front of him who had been tortured by her disability. He didn't know when she had become a stranger. He didn't understand why his previously naive and lively junior marshal sister would harm others and herself without a guilty conscience. Shui Yun didn't care about the way he looked at her and sighed, "It's a pity that Miss Yu still seems to hate me. You wanted to kill her, so how can she not hate you?" Only then did Shui Yun raise her head to look at him. Her hands drooped weakly on her knees. "Senior Marshal brother, have you forgotten that I was the one who lost my arms and legs and can't walk?" "Not her." Jing Qin saw her actions and instantly felt guilty. No matter what, Uncle Master let her go down the mountain. The letter had instructed him to protect her from the disaster, but he hadn't done it. Shui Yun didn't miss the slightest expression on his face. She smiled and softly said, "Senior Marshal brother, think about it calmly. Miss Yu's good fortune today was also because of me. If I hadn't been injured to this extent, I wouldn't have recommended her to sit at Heavy Cloud's banquet. How did she become famous in the Twin Sons gathering? If I had not forced you to sever your ties with her, how could she have escaped the death of 2 people from the Taisher Library because of her closeness to you? Just because she was recuperating in the princess residence, she really did not know that someone had mysteriously died in Taisher Library. Others did not know the details, but she could guess a thing or two. Someone was trying to kill the person beside Jing Chen." Hearing her last sentence, Jing Chen's eyes flashed with sharpness. It was so fast that even Shui Yun did not notice it. She only heard him ask in a low voice, "Who told you that someone died in the Taisher Library?" It had already been a month since he had moved her out of the eldest princess residence and changed out the maids and guards that had been keeping an eye on him and reporting back to her. Zhang Shuyuan had only died a few days ago, so how would she know? Shui Yun smiled. She was well aware of Jing Chen's thoughts. She looked at Jing Chen with a gentle expression. Just like many years ago, she looked at the little Shi Xiang who was always far away from the others of the same sect, but whose eyes were filled with envy. He probably did not know that even though he had not been happy or sad these years. But those were pure thoughts. They were all imprinted in that pair of eyes that were as clear as a stream. Only she could understand his thoughts. Shi Xiang. So silly that it made one's heart ache. You think that just because people see me, I can only obediently recuperate and wait for you to send me back to the mountain? Shui Yun shook her head, saying, "Only by staying by your side and waiting for you to lose your life, can I be at ease." As she said this, she lowered her head to look at her soft and powerless hands and said, "There is another reason why I went down the mountain this time. It is to help the Celestial Commissioner sort out the ancient Taoist books. Although I can't lift my hands right now, it's not a problem to go out. Today I showed up at Prince Jing's residence. It is expected that the Celestial Commissioner will send someone to greet me in a few days. Tell me, should I go or not?" Jing Qin naturally did not want her to go. He and Yu Shu were both at the Celestial Commissioner's side. If she got involved, it would be difficult to guarantee that it would not be a bad thing. "I know that Shi Xiang doesn't want me to go," Shui Yun said softly, "but I am really lonely at home. Why don't we make a deal? You invite Miss Yu over and talk to me. I promise you that I won't go out. Otherwise, Shi Xiang will not be able to make the decision for me." Jing Qin stared at her, pursed his lips, and turned to leave without saying a word. Shui Yun looked at his lonely back and a trace of sadness appeared on her pale face. She silently said, "Silly Shi Xiang, I am doing this for your own good. In the second half of the month, the Kunling Bureau became busy. The marriage of the officials became secondary. At the end of the month, they had to submit the schedule for the next month's imperial concubines. Today Yushu came very early. From the clock tower to the entrance of the bureau, she smiled and returned greetings to the people who greeted her. Anyone could see that she was in a good mood. Lu Hong and Su Qing, one on the left and one on the right, followed closely behind her. One was a wily old fox, one was a rash youth. Both of them were secretly rejoicing in their hearts. Previously, they were still somewhat envious of their bodyguard team and laughed at them for following a female official. Now look, in just a few days, this young female Darren of theirs seemed to have stepped on a blue cloud under her feet, leaping up another level. Yushu passed by the corridor. From the window she saw Wen Xiao, and who was immersed in copying words in the great study. Seeing his diligence early in the morning, she was very satisfied. She admired this kind of person who was willing to work hard. Entering the study, Wen Xiao rose to greet her. "Good morning, Darren." Last night, Yushu had caught a glimpse of him at Jing Wangfu's banquet. He was sitting in an inconspicuous corner and didn't fawn over Lu Tan like the others. This made her feel that she was dutiful. He had already become her person. How could he still think of hugging Jing Wangfu's thigh? "You don't have to be so reserved in private. Do your work," Yushu casually said. Wen Xiao, and didn't take it seriously. He put down the desk and took the tea that he had prepared ahead of time to put it in front of her before returning to his work. Yu Shu blew on the tea flowers and leaned against the window to look at the Persian chrysanthemums in full bloom along the corridor. She enjoyed the bright morning sun and felt very comfortable. In the end, it was because of the good news that Shui Rui told her last night. The marriage between the Shui family and the Counts Fu had fallen through. She admitted that she was narrow-minded and didn't want Shui Rui to have an unclear relationship with other women. When she heard about this from Rui Zizhu at the hibiscus banquet, it wasn't that she didn't feel disgusted, but when she thought that she had no choice, she could empathize with Shui Rui. Shui Rui didn't disappoint her understanding in vain. He silently solved this problem, and he didn't drag it on just because he cherished the brotherhood between him and Ruilin, nor did he care about the pressure from old Minister Shui. How could she not be happy with this? Yushu pondered. Shui Rui had performed so well, she should give him some reward. But what did he lack? It seemed that he didn't lack anything. She only gave him a Mujiang fan. She didn't have anything better on hand. She started to worry again. She felt like there was a pine ball in her heart. If she didn't give him something, she wouldn't feel good. When he collected his thoughts, he saw the 2 guards standing in the corridor as door guards and called them over. I have been working in the building for the past 2 days. Have you been standing outside like this? She frowned and asked. Lu Hong was shocked and worried that she was dissatisfied. Su Qing answered foolishly, Yes, Your Excellency. Lu Hong hurriedly added, I didn't dare to leave my post without permission. I am at your command at any time. Yu Shu felt that it was a waste of these 2 strong workers. It was okay to go out at ordinary times. She cherished her life and wouldn't let them go far away. But Kunling Bureau was very safe. There was Jing Chen upstairs, who could break in and strangle her in the daytime. In the future, when you come in the morning, you don't have to stand guard at the door. Just walk around the Celestial Commissioner's office. If you see or hear anything new, come back in the afternoon and tell me. Don't wander around. There was only Wen Xiao and in the room. Yu Shu didn't hide her words from him. Wen Xiao, and didn't raise his head and just talked to the stacks of files on the table. Su Qing scratched his head. When he was about to ask what was new, he was pulled by his arm by Lu Hong. He said, I know. I will go and do my work now. Yu Shu nodded secretly. This Lu Hong was someone who knew what he was doing. As for the other one, he was a little dazed. It wasn't a bad thing. After sending the 2 of them out, Yu Shu didn't bother about what kind of reward she should give Shui Rui. She collected her thoughts and sat back at the desk. She picked up the secret booklet that was sent over from the palace yesterday and compared it with the records in the Kunling Bureau. The booklet recorded the future of the Kuei water of the ladies of the One Moon Palace, their physical conditions and so on. This secret book wasn't directly sent to her by Shanggong Bureau. It had passed through several people. She was new and had to guard against people scheming against her. As expected, after this check, she found several inconspicuous errors. They seemed insignificant, and it was just a matter of who had one more or one less day. But if one strand was touched, it could affect the bedding arrangements for an entire month. She circled them with a red brush and guessed that this was a method used by the women in the palace to fight for favor. The current emperor's harem was full. Empress Rui sure held the phoenix seal and had no children. Her position was high but empty. Next to her was noble consort Shui. This beauty, who had long been known as the most beautiful in the harem, had only given birth to 1 imperial son. In addition, there were 4 consorts. Shu consort Yin Shi was the daughter of the most prominent official, the Yin family. Ning Wang was her son. Xian consort Lu Shi was Lu Yi's birth mother. She had been reprimanded by the emperor because the imperial envoy had no head. Although she didn't demote her position, she didn't have long to live. There were also a few concubines, a few nobles, and a few beauties. Those who had raised princes and princesses were conferred titles. These were all listed in the secret book. Generally speaking, they could have 1 day in a month. But if the concubines of a higher rank had their periods delayed by 1 or 2 days, then some people had to wait until the next month. Interesting. Yu Shu found something fishy. She wasn't afraid to waste time. She made a table and arranged the number of times the women in the harem had bedding and waiting for time. Using modern mathematics to calculate the frequency, she got an interesting result. Chapter 618. Yu Shu was not in a hurry to investigate the situation, but the women in the palace could not sit still. They all knew that there were 2 new Darren in the Kunling Bureau. All the palaces and halls had ideas and sent the paternal family outside the palace to move around. But it was almost the end of the month and there was no news. It made people anxious. So early that morning, after the imperial concubines and nobles went to the empress to pay their respects, one group went east and one group went west to ask for help. Imperial consort Shui's Zhong Chui Palace had the most women. Even though this group of women lived deep in the palace, they were not blind and deaf. They found out that the two new officials of the Kunling Bureau were more or less related to Imperial consort Shui, so they all came here to gather. In the months that Lu Furen left her post, I heard that Junior Supervisor Ren was in charge of the Kunling Bureau. There are only 30 days a month. It is right that the Empress took up 5 days. But there are some who are not as high as the concubines who have good days every month. For example, Sun Guiran of Kongning Palace served His Majesty for 2 days last month. Yang Yang, you only served 3 days. Concubine Zhao, who had just been promoted at the beginning of the year, had an unconvinced expression. She twisted to sit on the embroidered stool, her watery eyes looking anxiously at Imperial Consort Shui as though she was defending her. Everyone knew that Junior Supervisor Ren was the son-in-law of the Count of Zhongyongfu and had married the niece of the Empress. Another concubine, Liang Guiran, who had just gotten a little princess last year, timidly interjected, "This servant hasn't seen the Emperor's face for 3 months. It's not that this servant has an extravagant hope. The 18th princess is still young, and His Majesty hasn't seen her many times." Imperial Consort Shui covered her mouth with a silk handkerchief between her 2 fingers that were like white bamboo shoots. She yawned and listened to their complaints. When no one spoke, she slowly moved her lips. "His Majesty has conferred the title of Miaoling Emissary at the Land and Water Conference. She is the new female Imperial of Kunling Bureau. Ben Gong will send someone to deliver the token later. If you want to meet this extraordinary person, you can come tomorrow morning." The women all had joyful expressions and answered, "All right, if there's anything to say it tomorrow. Ben Gong has a headache, go back and rest." Now that the group of people had achieved their goal, they tactfully got up and left. Standing by the side of the soft couch, the chief palace maid Song Lan signaled to the 2 palace maids with her eyes. She ordered them to stand outside the hall, rolled down the curtain, and bent down to massage noble consort Shui's legs. Discontentedly she said, "Master, why do you care about them? They are all fence-sitters." When Madame Lu was still the Celestial Commissioner, you should have known better. All of them went to Yongla Palace all day to curry favor with honored consort Shu. After young Master Ren finished supervising, they all went around the Empress. Now they came to you to pick a fight. Noble consort Shui smiled and said, "That's right. It's because of this that the palace is so lively. Our Zhongsui Palace has been deserted for quite a while. It's time to have more people." Song Lan pouted, "You have such a good temper. You should let them meet with some rebuffs and beg a few more times. How can you let them get what they want so easily?" Granny Tao walked in with a jade porcelain tray and heard the maid's voice. He glared at her and scolded in a low voice, "You little girl, you're talking nonsense in front of Master again." This Granny Tao was noble consort Shui's wet nurse since she was a child. She had served for nearly 40 years and was in her 50s. She didn't have any children and placed all her heart on noble consort Shui. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was noble consort Shui's most trusted person. Song Lan didn't dare to make a sound. She obediently lowered her head and washed the dishes for her master. Noble consort Shui looked at what Granny Tao was carrying and asked casually, "What is it?" Granny Tao said with a smile, "His Majesty ate milk cheese made from milk cows for breakfast. He remembered that Your Highness likes to eat it and specially ordered the Imperial Kitchen to send it over." Noble consort Shui raised her eyebrows. "Which palace did His Majesty rest in last night?" Eating breakfast before the morning court session and still thinking of her and casually sending food over, he probably wasn't at the consort's place last night. Song Lan continued in a low voice, "Last night, it was Sun Guiran's turn in Kongning Palace. His Majesty didn't ask her to be carried and went to Shixia Palace by herself." Noble consort Shui's peach blossom eyes narrowed into slits. Shixia Palace was originally Consort De's residence. The previous consort Da had a weak physique and passed away 3 years ago due to a serious illness. The main palace was empty, and after this Sun Guiran gained favor, she occupied a side palace. There really was no tiger in the mountains. Noble consort Shui had some impression of this new Sun Guiran. She had been selected last year and was the daughter of the assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue. She was 2 times younger than her and had a delicate appearance that was very attractive. Based on noble consort Xue's understanding of Emperor Zhaoqing over the years, she knew that this was the style that Sun Guiran would like the moment she saw him. Even she could see it, let alone the Empress. When Song Lan saw that Granny Tao didn't glare at her, she twisted her lips and continued, "This Mistress Sun has a backer and has the opportunity to see the Emperor personally for a few months in a row. Didn't concubine Zhao also say that it's only one day less than Mistress? That person really knows how to be a good person but he can't get it. That's enough." Noble consort Shui interrupted and kicked her arm with her left leg. Song Lan's expression changed and she realized that she had said the wrong thing. She hurriedly bowed and took a step back, kneeling on the ground. "Master, please forgive me. This servant has crossed the line." Noble consort Shui ignored her and sat up to fix her hair. She frowned and thought for a moment before raising her head to say to Granny Tao, "Send a sign to the Kunling Bureau and ask for the female imperial officials to enter the palace tomorrow morning." Although the concubines in the palace couldn't easily leave the palace, the main consorts could send a sign outside the palace at any time and summon the female family members in. Furthermore, the palace couldn't interfere in politics. Seeing foreign officials was absolutely forbidden, but the female officials were an exception. At this time, a senior palace maid walked in and bent over to noble consort Shue's ear and whispered a few words. Noble consort Shue's lips curled and she smiled coldly, saying, "It's a piece of meat. There will always be people watching. As for who gets to eat it, it depends on who is closer." When Yu Shu received the summons from the inner palace, she was sitting in a pavilion in the corner of the Kunling Bureau and eating lunch. The celestial commissioner was rich and overbearing. He had a special kitchen and hired a group of cooks. The officials who didn't go home at noon could all stay at the official's residence for lunch. For someone of Yu Shu's rank, her treatment was even better. She only needed to greet them in the morning, and at noon she would be served 4 dishes and a soup. The food was placed in a food box and sent over by a special servant. Thanks to Yu Shu, Wen Xiao, and could also eat a hot meal at noon. "What, noble consort Shui wants me to enter the palace?" Yu Shu put down her chopsticks and looked at the little eunuch who was running errands behind Xialan. She felt that he was a bit familiar. After thinking about it, she remembered. Wasn't this the little eunuch who delivered food to her during the ancestral worship ceremony in Huajin Garden? "Yes, official Yu, please take the sign and enter the palace tomorrow morning. Her Highness is waiting for you." The little eunuch smiled shyly and handed over a greenish-black piece of wood with 2 hands. It was painted red. Wen Xiao and got up to take it and gave it to Yu Shu. Yu Shu weighed the thing in her hands and asked, "Did Her Highness say what she wanted?" "I don't know. Please keep it well and don't lose it." The little eunuch knew that it was her first time, so he carefully reminded her. Yu Shu nodded and thought, "Noble consort Shui probably wants me to go in to arrange for me to serve her in bed next month. Alright, I got it." Wen Xiao and saw that Yu Shu didn't move the sign and didn't understand etiquette at all. He resigned to his fate and took out a small piece of silver from his sleeve and stuffed it into the little eunuch's hand. Seeing that the other party took it with a smile, he was relieved. Yu Shu saw his actions and smiled. After Xialan led the people away, she said to him, "You've learned to be tactful now. I still remember when I first met you, you lived in Peiran Hall and received a few taels of silver from someone. You would rather be beaten up than pay back a single copper. People have to suffer enough before they learn to be smart." Wen Xiao and picked up the bowl. The stubbornness in his delicate eyes had disappeared, leaving only persistence. Yu Shu didn't make fun of him anymore. She played with the palace token in her hand for a while. Although she had only met noble consort Shui once before, she had a good impression of Shui Rue, her aunt. Not to mention that she took care of her in Huajin Garden, just based on her favoritism at the gentleman's hibiscus banquet not long ago, she had to repay her. It was her first time being an official, so she didn't have much experience. However, she knew that there were no fish in clear water. Sitting in this position, she had to find some benefits for herself. It was better to find convenience for her own people. She had just put away the token in her hand when she looked up and saw Xialan returning. There was still a eunuch behind him, but it wasn't the familiar person from before. "This servant greets official Yu. Our consort Xian has sent a token to invite you to the West Palace tomorrow." "Consort Xian? Consort Lu Xian? Lu Yi's mother?" Yu Shu almost laughed. Wen Xiao and took the token and handed it to her. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Yu Shu saw Xialan again and the eunuch behind him. This time it was Consort Shu. Yu Shu held 3 palace tokens in her hands. They were the same color but the characters were different. If she had another one she could make a couplet and send it out. When Xiao and finished eating and put down his bowl to look at her, he frowned and asked, "What does official Yu plan to do?" The three consorts all wanted to see her tomorrow. They must all have the same idea. However, if she followed one's heart, she would have to disobey the others. If she didn't do well, she would be at a disadvantage. "I'll go see them one by one and listen to the consort's instructions." Yu Shu looked at him and asked, "What do you think I should do?" When Xiao and had a thoughtful look on his face, he thought that Yu Shu was testing him. He thought about it carefully and looked around to make sure there was no one around. Then he lowered his voice and said, "I know that official Yu will side with Imperial Consort Xian, but you can't offend the other two because of this." Yu Shu snorted and scooped up the 3 tablets. She stood up straight and looked down at him saying, "Idiot, who's afraid of offending who?" After she finished speaking, she folded her sleeves and walked away. When Xiao and was startled and turned his head to look for her, he saw her leisurely strolling to the corridor. She passed by a pot of Persian chrysanthemum and even bent down to pick one. She didn't look worried at all. It wasn't until she disappeared that he suddenly came back to his senses and understood what she meant by her last sentence. Yes, no matter what status the people in the palace had, they should be the ones afraid of offending her. What did she have to be afraid of? P.S. Fruit's browser crashed. It was just fixed, so it was late by an hour. Chapter 619. As the sun set and the bell rang, Yu Shu stopped writing and left the dedicated Wen Xiaoan behind. She called Su Qing to take the official seal and leave. As soon as she left the small building, she saw Jing Chen standing at the end of the corridor. It seemed that he had something to say to her. Yu Shu had an intuition that it wasn't a good thing, but he was standing on the way out, so she couldn't pretend not to see him. "Isn't the right commander going back? Where are you going later?" "Naturally, I'm going home." Hearing this, Jing Chen hesitated and said, "Well, come back to the princess's residence with me." Yu Shu frowned and was about to refuse, but Shui Yun's clever appearance suddenly flashed in her mind. She also thought that if Jing Chen couldn't say anything in front of the Celestial Commissioner, but he wanted her to go to the princess's residence, it was most likely Shui Yun's request. Thus he took a step forward and approached Jing Chen. In a low voice he said, "Go back and tell your junior sister that I don't care what kind of good intentions she has. If she dares to plot against me again, I won't forgive her this time." Yu Shu knew that Shui Yun schemed to take her life because of Jing Chen, so she accepted her bad luck. With her vengeful character, it was rare for her to forgive others. Now that Shui Yun was targeting her again in Yu Shu's view, it was tantamount to courting death. After saying that, she swayed past him. Lu Hong and Su Qing saw that they had finished talking, so they followed. Jing Chen was rejected by her and threatened her in return, but he wasn't surprised. It seemed that he had expected her to have this kind of reaction. He didn't stop her and watched her walk away with a normal expression. Back at the princess's residence, Jing Chen went straight to see Shui Yun. Shui Yun, who was lying under the tree and taking a nap, heard his footsteps and woke up. When she opened her eyes and saw him, she was a little surprised. After the two of them had a gap, although they lived under the same roof. In addition to regularly checking the recovery of her hands and feet, Jing Chen rarely took the initiative to see her. After thinking for a moment, she smiled. "Did senior brother invite Miss Yu for me?" Jing Chen walked up to her and looked down at her. Instead of answering, he asked, "What kind of person do you think Xiao Yu is?" Shui Yun's eyes flickered, but she still smiled. "Miss Yu is a smart and courageous woman." "Anything else?" "Extremely loyal." "Anything else?" Shui Yun slowly shook her head. "I don't know much about her." "Why did senior apprentice brother suddenly ask me this?" Jing Chen told her expressionlessly, "I thought you knew that she was not to be trifled with, but you didn't. She asked me to tell you that if you have any ideas about her again, she won't forgive you." Shui Yun's delicate eyebrows wrinkled. He said, "Miss Yu is too prejudiced against me. If I don't meet her face to face, if I explain it to her clearly, I don't know how long she'll hate me, senior brother. I'll dictate later and you can write a letter for me to bring to her." "Okay." Jing Chen was silent for a moment before he said, "Am I someone that can be easily deceived in your eyes?" Shui Yun looked confused. "Senior brother, what are you talking about? If you want to see her, you can go behind my back to see her. You clearly know that she hates you, but you still want me to pass on the message. You deliberately want her to have a deeper misunderstanding of me and hate me as well. Do you think I don't know what you're planning?" Shui Yun's eyes narrowed. Jing Qin confirmed his guess and a hint of disappointment appeared on his face. Shui Yun saw this and immediately smiled bitterly. In short, no matter what I do now, you think I have bad intentions. No matter what Miss Yu does, you think she's good. Jing Qin didn't say anything. Shui Yun bit her lower lip in grievance and said, I think you just can't let go of her. Jing Qin shook his head and said, I'm afraid that you'll suffer the consequences of your own actions. I only advise you not to interfere in my affairs anymore, and don't involve innocent people. Otherwise you'll harm others and yourself. After saying this he turned and left. Shui Yun put away her unnecessary expression and breathed a sigh of relief. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Fortunately it's not her. The Celestial Commissioner had first appointed Jing Qin as the right commander, and later made Yu Shu his subordinate. When Shui Yun heard this news, she instinctively felt that this arrangement was deliberate. Coupled with the murder at the Imperial Historian's Library, she was surprised at that time. Would Yu Shu be the person that Jing Qin had been waiting for 20 years for? This conjecture made her restless. Thus, she had tested Jing Qin this time, not to create a rift between them, but to find out whether Yu Shu was the real deal or not. Fortunately, when she heard Jing Qin's last words, she was sure that it wasn't Yu Shu. The next day Yu Shu entered the palace. She was invited into the palace by 3 imperial concubines at the same time. If it were anyone else they probably wouldn't be able to sleep all night. However, Yu Shu had a good night's sleep. She went to bed early last night and didn't waste any energy thinking about how to deal with today. Compared to her, she didn't know whether the imperial concubines slept well last night. Outside the palace gate, she first handed over Imperial Consort Shue's token. After waiting for a long time, a palace maid came out of Yeding to take her in. Yu Shu didn't recognize this palace maid, but this palace maid recognized her. She smiled gently and said, This servant has seen official Yu once at the gentleman's hibiscus banquet. At that time, I felt that you had an extraordinary bearing and didn't seem like an ordinary woman. Now I must congratulate you on your career advancement. Only then did Yu Shu look at her again. She vaguely remembered that this was the maid who served Imperial Consort Shui on the 6th day of the 6th lunar month. Thus, she asked for her name and the other readily answered that her name was Songlan. There was a long distance from the Meridian Gate to the back palace. With this palace maid smiling and chatting with her, Yu Shu didn't feel tired. Along the way she only met 2 groups of palace maids. They all recognized this Songlan and tried to curry favor with her. However, when it came to Yu Shu, they only cast curious glances at her and didn't ask too much. Official Yu, this way please. Be careful of the Dorzil. Imperial Consort Shui lived in Zhongzue Palace. The walls were tall and vermilion. Just the Dorzil alone was taller than Yu Shu's calves. There were 2 doors in total. She lifted her clothes and stepped over it. In front of her was a large courtyard house. On both sides were a flower pond and a painted screen. In the middle, there was a corridor paved with green and red marble that led directly to the main hall. Yu Shu was led all the way to the door. She saw the palace maid in green who was guarding outside the door, roll up the gauze curtain. When she looked up, she saw the dazzling Kong Lan sitting on the Luohan chair with her arms crossed in front of her. Yu Shu really couldn't think of any adjectives to describe Imperial Consort Shui. This was a woman that made people speechless. She immediately bowed and greeted, This subject Yu Shu greets Imperial Consort Shui. Imperial Consort Shui looked at her and smiled. Fortunately Yu Shu had her head lowered. Otherwise, her eyes would be dazzled again. Come and sit. Don't be shy. You're Qingbai's adopted younger sister. If I treated you as an outsider, I wouldn't have asked you to come today. Yu Shu raised her head and saw Imperial Consort Shui waving at her. Although Imperial Consort Shui was beautiful, this simple gesture made her feel inexplicably close. Thank you, Your Highness, for the seat. She spoke respectfully, but her hands and feet were free. She strode over and sat down on a chair right under Imperial Consort Shui's hand. Chapter 620. Yu Shu stayed in Zhongzue Palace for less than an hour. When she came out, she only had an extra honey-colored pouch hanging on her waist, so she didn't attract much attention. After seeing noble Consort Shui, she next went to Consort Shu, who lived in Yongla Palace. When Yu Shu was sent to the palace gate by Songlan, a young eunuch came forward to recognize her. He first politely called, older sister Songlan, and then bowed to Yu Shu. Is this the Miaoling messenger? This servant little Qingzi was summoned by Empress Shu to lead the way for you. Please follow this servant. Yu Shu looked at Song Lan, who smiled and said, "Since Consort Shu sent someone to take me, this servant will save a few steps. Official Yu, please take care." Yu Shu confirmed that this eunuch was one of Consort Shu's people, so she followed her with ease. Song Lan stood under the doorsill and watched them walk through the passageway before turning back. In Yongla Palace there was a tea table. Smoke curled up from the tea. Consort Shu held a cup of fragrant tea and spoke with Yu Shu, who was sitting on the futon below, with an indifferent expression. "Do you know why I summoned you into the palace today?" On this hot day, Yu Shu had drunk a bowl of iced snow toad dew at Zhongsue Palace. Now that she smelled the top-grade bitter tea, she didn't feel good at all. When she heard Consort Shu's pretentious attitude, she felt it was ridiculous. It was no wonder that the Yin family was more powerful than the Shui family, but this Consort Shu was inferior to Consort Shui. "This female subject is slow-witted. Please speak clearly, Your Highness." Consort Shu said, "As the female imperial consort of the Kunling Bureau, you have the right to investigate the secrets of the palace. I need to remind you, be careful with your words and actions." Yu Shu understood Consort Shu's warning. This was a disguised warning not to use her power for personal gain. As expected, honored Consort Shu then talked about her predecessor and former superior. Previously, the two female officers in charge of the Kunling Bureau were Madame Lu and Madame Qin. Later on, the two of them had a disagreement. One of them actually dared to accept bribes and change the list of attendants without permission. However, the truth could not be concealed. She was exposed and is still in prison. Yu Shu had long heard of this matter from others. Now that honored Consort Shu mentioned it in front of her, the meaning was self-evident. This consort sees that you've accomplished so much at such a young age, and you're also loyal and filial. I can't bear to see you go astray in the future, so it's inevitable that my words won't be pleasant to hear. You must not learn from your predecessors and commit more unjust acts. In the future, if someone reports this to this consort, no one will be able to protect you. You must remember this. Empress Shu's eyes were filled with coldness as she stared at Yu Shu. Her straight face was extremely dignified. Yu Shu's expression did not change, a smile still hanging on her lips. She waited until she finished speaking before continuing. "This subject will definitely remember Nyang Yang's teachings." She was still sitting on that praying mat, not moving at all. There was no fear and trepidation, nor did she become angry out of humiliation. Honored Consort Shu frowned, not very satisfied with her reaction. Thus she gave her a few more reminders. Yu Shu listened to them one by one, waiting for her to finish before responding respectfully. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Yu Shu came out of Yongla Palace. In addition to the smell of tea, there was also a hint of ridicule at the corner of her mouth. Should she say that this honored Consort Shu was smart, or that she was inflexible? 1.5 months ago at the Hibiscus Gentleman's Banquet, this honored Consort Shu was one of the people who had thrown stones at her while she was down. She had almost given her the name of being heartless and unjust. In the end, she had obtained the gold and jade hibiscus, but she had not given her a good face. Today she had even given her a threatening warning, not having the slightest intention of currying favor with her. She must have known that it was useless to say good words to her, so she had simply put on a good face. What she had done was not wrong. If it had been someone with less guts, perhaps their hands and feet would have been tied. However, how could Yu Shu be frightened by a few words? If she was really a good-for-nothing, she would not have gotten to where she was now. After leaving Yongla Palace without looking back, Yu Shu was taken away by a eunuch of Yuhua Palace who had been waiting outside the door and brought to Consort Shu. This was the first time that Yu Shu had seen Consort Shu, so she was a little surprised. She had seen the graceful beauty of noble Consort Shui and the dignified and demure honored Consort Shu. She had thought that Consort Shu was also a beauty. However, in reality this Consort Shu, who was the birth mother of the 11th prince, Lu Yi, had a very ordinary appearance. Unlike noble Consort Shui, who didn't resort to insinuations, and Consort Yin, who was pretentious, Consort Xian's attitude towards Yu Shu couldn't be more normal. It was so normal that Yu Shu couldn't figure it out. I have heard of official Yu's reputation and was curious. I wanted to take this opportunity to meet you and have a chat. I have no other intentions. Consort Xian gave an opening remark and naturally began to chat with Yu Shu. They talked about everything from the Dian examination to the water and land conference. She was originally a daughter of the Yi Shui family, so before entering the palace for the selection, she had a lot of knowledge and had many common topics with Yu Shu. This chat lasted for 2 hours. The sun had risen high in the sky and it was noon. Consort Xian asked Yu Shu to stay for lunch, and the latter took the opportunity to agree. After the meal, Consort Xian had the chief palace maid beside her send Yu Shu out of the palace. When she was about to reach the door, the chief palace maid asked Yu Shu to stop. She squatted down and bowed to Yu Shu. She said kindly, "This servant thanks official Yu. Master hasn't chatted so happily with someone for a long time. Ever since Lord 11's accident." She paused and didn't continue. Instead, she lowered her voice and said, "Master doesn't ask for much. She will be satisfied if she can serve His Majesty for 2 days every month. Please do this for official Yu." As she said this, she took out a banana-shaped jade talisman from her sleeve and stuffed it into Yu Shu's hand. "This is a token of appreciation from Your Highness. With this jade talisman you can go to the Lu's Great Exchange Shop. If you have any needs you can look for Lu Ning." Yu Shu looked at the thing that was stuffed into her hand. Her eyes flashed, but she didn't refuse. Instead, she put it into her bosom and said, "Please rest assured, Your Highness." As one of the 4 consorts, Consort Lu's position was only below that of the Empress and noble Consort Shui. Normally she could be on equal footing with Consort Shu. However, she was implicated by the case of the imperial envoy without a head and was ignored by Emperor Zhao Qing. There were many vile people in the palace who stepped on the high and flattered the low. It was expected that she had received a lot of cold treatment these days. Yu Shu had seen the bedtime schedule of the Kunling Bureau in recent years. The consorts almost had 3 days of bedtime every month. If Consort Lu wanted 3 days, Yu Shu might have hesitated. However, Consort Lu only asked for 2 days. Judging the situation, Yu Shu couldn't help but praise her cleverness. To put it bluntly, bedtime for consorts was to increase their intimacy with the emperor and to ensure their status in the imperial harem. Consort Lu knew that Emperor Zhao Qing didn't like her, so she didn't get close to him. She took the initiative to ask for 1 day. Those 2 days could ensure that she could get along with Emperor Zhao Qing and protect her reputation. Yu Shu had seen the 3 consorts. As she walked out of the inner palace, she thought about it and made a conclusion. Noble Consort Shui was asking for help, Consort Shu was seeking stability, and Consort Xian was seeking peace. Chapter 621. Before the end of the 7th month, Yu Shu drew up a list of the palace consorts to serve the emperor and gave it to Jing Qin to look over. Jing Qin only skimmed through it once and then stamped a large seal at the end of the booklet. Next to her seal, there were 2 thin sheets of paper wrapped in ginger wood and coated with a secret wax paste. It was called the Book of Kuan and was personally safeguarded by Jing Qin. At the end of the month, the Palace Internal Affairs Commission would send someone to retrieve it. Although she expected that Jing Qin would not have any objections to her arrangements, Yu Shu still dutifully reported to him. "I referred to the secret booklet of the Kunling Bureau for the past 3 years. According to their positions, I first recorded the dates of the Empress and the 3 official consorts, then the consorts and noblewomen. Based on the lunar calendar, those with conflicting birthdays are staggered. Those with impure bodies are not recorded. Because the next month is the first month, we need to set aside the 7th and 19th to avoid ancestral taboos." On the surface, the schedule that Yu Shu had arranged was meticulous and could be said to be standard. In reality, there was a hidden mystery. For example, Noble Consort Shui and Noble Consort Shu both had 3 days, but Noble Consort Shu had 1 day scheduled on the 15th. There was a banquet in the palace on the 15th of the 8th month. Emperor Zhao Qing would definitely be drunk. The banquet would end at the 3rd watch and there would be morning court the next day. He would not have the energy to be intimate with Noble Consort Shu. He probably wouldn't even be able to say a few words before washing up and sleeping. There was another Sun Guorin who was below the position of consort, but when Ren Qiming had been in charge of the Kunling Bureau, she had gotten 2 days in a row in 3 months. Before Yu Shu had entered the palace to see Noble Consort Shui, she had felt that there was something fishy about this. After Noble Consort Shui's guidance, she had learned that this Sun Guorin was actually a palace maid in the Empress's Pepper Hall. If she continued to investigate, the Empress was middle-aged and had no children. Emperor Zhao Qing also favored young beauties. This Sun Guorin's position was very interesting. When it came to Yu Shu, Sun Guorin was also queued up for 2 days. Coincidentally, 1 day was after honored Consort Shu, which was on the 16th day of the Mid-Autumn Festival. The night before, Emperor Zhao Qing had rested at concubine Shu's. The next day he would see his lovely concubine. He would probably relax a little. The next day he was in front of another young and beautiful concubine Zhao. Emperor Zhao Qing was already in his 40s. He was no longer as promiscuous as when he was young. If concubine Zhao got wet, there would be nothing for Sun Guiran to do the next day. No one could find fault with such an arrangement. Half of it was noble consort Shue's idea, and the other half was Yu Shu's revenge in public. Didn't consort Shu warn me not to abuse my power for personal gain? I'm plotting this as private. If you have the ability, come and bite me. If Empress Shu knew that her threat had no effect at all. Instead, it caused Yu Shu to sneak up on her. Would she regret it? Jing Chen couldn't see that Yu Shu had done something to the August Great Earth Register. After listening to her report, he said to her, "It involves the private affairs of the palace maids. As a man, it's more convenient for you. You can draw up the future Great Earth Register and give it to me to stamp. Originally, my position as the right commander was also an acting one." Yu Shu could tell that he wanted to be a hands-off boss. How could she not be willing? She raised the corner of her mouth and gave him a rare smile. "Okay." Jing Chen looked at her smiling face, his thoughts drifting away. When he came back to his senses, she had already left. Yu Shu hadn't seen Shui Rui for several days. She had been busy arranging the list of attendants in the past few days and didn't have time to think about it. Once the official business was finished, she kept thinking about him. She went to Wangji Tower to look for him but didn't find him. Instead, she heard two maids say something, "The gentleman that the girl brought a few days ago. I don't know how he found the feng shui pool you set up on the balcony. He sneaked in once and we bumped into him." Yu Shu picked up Xen Lishan near Xian's mansion and got the secret of Yunhua's relics out of him. Seeing that he had nowhere to go, she arranged for him to live in Wangji Tower. She had been busy for 7 or 8 days and didn't have time to care about him. Xiaoqing and Xiaodai were dedicated to serving Yu Shu. When she was not there, no one ordered them. According to Yu Shu's instructions, they changed the spring water of the feng shui pool with crystal stones every day and cleaned the dust. So they caught Xian Lishan immediately. But they worried that he was Yu Shu's guest, so they kindly asked him to leave. Unexpectedly, Xian Lishan was so thick-skinned that he didn't feel ashamed when he was discovered. Instead, he wandered on the top of the 3rd floor every day, which made the two maids always guard against him. They couldn't sleep well at night and were miserable. After listening to their story, Yu Shu smiled happily. She found Xian Lishan's room, knocked on the door and went in. It was dinner time and Xian Lishan hadn't served the dishes yet. He was lying under the window with his legs crossed in a daze. A string of shiny crystal beads was hanging on his hand, shining under the light. It was the reward he got for helping Yu Shu make the Mujiang fan. When he saw Yu Shu coming in, he just twisted his neck and didn't get up. "Fifth uncle, are you used to living here? The food is good and I can avoid disasters. I'm used to living here." Xian Lishan squinted at her. "What? Do you think I'm eating and drinking here and want to kick me out?" Yu Shu was still wearing the blue kale official robe. She lifted the corner of her robe and sat opposite him. She smiled and said, "It's nothing to eat and drink for free. Wangji Tower has a lot of money, so we don't need these meals. I treat fifth uncle as a guest, but you don't treat yourself as an outsider." These words were so sarcastic that Xian Lishan touched his nose. "Did the two little girls tell on me?" Yu Shu looked serious. "Fifth uncle comes from the family of Yishui. You know the rules of Yishui better than me. Don't you know that it's a taboo to pry into other people's secret?" Xian Lishan was a great master from a family of creators. She used the 8 gates life and death tactics of Taoist Qingzheng for the feng shui pool upstairs. Others couldn't understand it, but he might. "Look at what you said. It's not so serious." Xian Lishan sat up straight and said with an embarrassed face, "I'm just too curious and can't help but want to see it. Even if I see it, I will only think about it and keep it in my stomach. I will never reveal it to you." Yu Shu snorted. If she didn't believe in Xian Lishan's character, she wouldn't let him live here. Xian Lishan was not a villain since he could leave home for his old friend who died 20 years ago. "Do you really want to see the feng shui pool where I raise the crystal?" Xian Lishan's eyes brightened when he heard that she left room for negotiation. "Are you willing? It's not impossible, but the technique taught by my master is unique in the world. How can I easily share it with others?" Xian Lishan knew that she was deliberately keeping him in suspense and that she must have a request later. But when he thought of the mysterious feng shui land upstairs that was waiting to be excavated, his heart itched unbearably. Curiosity won over him and he continued, "What do you want?" Chapter 622. In reality, what Lu Tan did was smart. He wanted to use Yu Shu, but he was selling a favor to Shui Rui. Unfortunately, the Shui family and Jing Wangfu were in the same boat. Shui Rui was selling a favor for nothing. Shui Rui understood and calmly looked at Lu Tan. He turned his head to ask Shui Lingnan, "What does grandfather think should be done?" Shui Lingnan replied, "The matters of the Hogong, us foreign officials should not interfere. But the child in your Jiumu's womb is of great importance and cannot be neglected." He didn't finish his words. Shui Rui saw a deeper meaning in his eyes. His heart jumped and he couldn't help but think. There were many Feipin in the Hogong. Above Guifei there was only one empress. If Guifei successfully gave birth, her contributions would be even more prominent. If at this time something happened to the empress, then the empress, who was childless and lacking in virtue, would definitely be impeached by the imperial censors. When the position of empress was empty, among the women in the Hogong, who would have the qualifications to advance? Shui Rui lightly pursed his lips. Looking at Lu Tan's still young and inexperienced face, he guessed that he definitely hadn't thought of this layer. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to sit still long ago and wouldn't have had the thought to use him. "Grandfather, don't worry." Faced with such a situation, Shui Rui could only agree. Shui Lingnan looked at him with satisfaction. He turned his head to say to Lu Tan, "After the Mid-Autumn Festival, it will be Wang Ye's grand wedding. I only hope that it will be perfect." Lu Tan smiled and said, "At that time, grandfather must drink a few more cups of grandson's wedding wine." Shui Rui watched from the side as the grandfather and grandson talked about an off-topic topic. One had a pleasant expression, the other was close. It was completely a scene of children and grandchildren being happy. But he was like an outsider watching coldly from the side. Yushu wasn't in a deep sleep. She could hear some movement in the room. Even with her eyes closed, she could feel someone sitting in front of her. She had been lying flat and turned her body. When she opened her eyes, she saw Shui Rui sitting on a chair 1 chi away from her. Not far away there was a dim gauze lamp under the window. With just a few inches of light she could barely make out the person. "You're awake?" Yushu slowly sat up. She tucked her messy hair behind her ears. She reached for the teacup on the table. Shui Rui picked up the teapot before her and refilled half of the tea in her cup. After quenching her thirst, Yushu propped her head up and looked at him. "What happened at home?" Shui Rui replied, "The imperial consort is indeed pregnant." Yushu sat up in an instant, her eyes wide. "Rui Tan." Shui Rui nodded. Yushu was happy at first and then found that he didn't seem to be smiling. She asked, "What, you are not happy?" Shui Rui asked her in return, "Why are you so happy?" "This is a good thing," Yushu stated matter-of-factly to him. "First, I am a female imperial official in Kunling Bureau. Whichever Nyang in the palace is favored has an effect on me. Of the empress and the other Feipin, I favor Guifei the most. Now that she has the grace of the emperor, I am happy to see it happen. Second, I don't want to see Ningguang gain power. Of course, it's better if the 9th prince gains power." Hearing her honest words, Shui Rui sighed, "You are really honest." Yushu reached out to poke him. "It's your turn to speak. Why are you unhappy?" Shui Rui could have used a roundabout way to tell her what Lu Tan had entrusted to him, and first made it clear that he was in a difficult position and that he had no choice. He did not want her to think that he had any intention of doing anything for her, but he did not. He told her just as plainly, "I want you to help read fortune for Guifei and ensure the safety of the child in her womb." The people outside all thought that she could read life and death. Only he knew her background. What she was truly skilled at was determining fortune and misfortune. Shui Rui was more confident than Lu Tan. As long as she was willing to put effort into this matter, then the child in Guifei's womb would be safe. Absolutely safe. Also, this was a shortcut that could free him from the heavy shackles of the Shui family. Yushu thought for a moment before agreeing. "Yes, I want to know Guifei's birthday. Starting tomorrow, I will read for her until she safely gives birth." She readily agreed. Shui Rui didn't feel relaxed and said in a deep voice, "Think carefully. Participating in this matter is not the same as you agreeing to tamper with the Book of Kuan." Yushu didn't understand the hidden meaning in his words. In her opinion, these two things were both to help Guifei Shui. What difference could there be? Shui Rui patiently explained to her, "Once you start to read fortune for Guifei and find that someone is plotting against her, I want you to tell me the details as soon as possible. Think about it now. Who doesn't want to see Guifei safely give birth? Prince Ning?" The first person Yushu thought of was the two-faced dog lord. If you can know in advance when Prince Ning will make a move, how much chance do you think you can make him go for wool and come home shorn? Yushu's eyes brightened. This was the drama where Prince Ning sent someone to harm Guifei but failed. After the matter was exposed, he was stripped of his title and driven out of the capital by the emperor in a rage. 3 years ago, there was no evidence that Prince Ning framed the 10th princess. As time passed, it was difficult to investigate. This time, if I can catch Prince Ning in the act, I will not let him go. Shui Rui said in a low voice and asked her, "Think again." "Well, the Empress." "Yes, and the Empress," Shui Rui said slowly. "The Empress has been in charge of the 6 palaces for more than 10 years. She has no children. There are 7 laws. When a woman reaches 50 years of age and has no children, she can choose a concubine as the eldest. If she is not virtuous, she should be abandoned. The Empress is 47 years old this year, a little older than the Emperor. It seems that it is difficult for her to have a child. She is nearly 50 years old. Seeing Guifei is pregnant, she is more anxious than anyone else. If she harms the dragon and the matter is exposed, she will be impeached. Think again. If the Empress is deposed, which concubine is most likely to be promoted by the Emperor? Imperial concubine. Yushu swallowed her saliva. In this way, Lu Tan would directly become a prince of the first wife. Then what else is there to fight for? What is there to fight for? So, no matter who will harm Guifei, it can shake the whole court. Now do you know whether you are involved in this matter or not? Do you know what it means? It's fine if it succeeds, but if it fails, can you bear the consequences? Listening to Shui Rui's explanation, Yushu found that she had thought too simply. If she agreed to help him calculate fortune and misfortune for Guifei, then she would be completely on the pirate ship, and it would be difficult to get off. Historically, there were only 2 outcomes for those who failed in the fight for the throne: death and a life worse than death. This made her hesitate again. Compared to Ning Wang becoming the crown prince, she was more willing to see Lu Tan become the crown prince. Otherwise, she would not have been willing to help Shui Guifei change the Book of Great Earth and ignore the Empress and Xu Fei. However, she did not forget that the starting point of everything she did was to escape the death trap of the person who broke the fate, to save her life. But who knew how long it would take for Lu Tan to sit on the throne after he became the crown prince? It was hard to say if the emperor would deal with her during this time. Then whether Lu Tan would become the crown prince, whether he would be able to become the emperor in the future. In the end, it could not decide if she could keep her little life. Was there a need for her to take such a risk for an unnecessary matter? If it was someone else, they would definitely think for a few days, but for Yushu, who often toyed with probability, it was just the time it took to drink a sip of tea. Deji, you don't have to scare me. I will do this. Come, let's clap hands and agree. Whoever regrets is a bastard. One of her principles was, rather than waiting for death, it was better to take the initiative and attack. Furthermore, she had confidence in Shui Rui. She could divine the mastermind who wanted to harm Guifei, so Shui Rui would definitely be able to make them reveal their true colors. Yushu was still sitting on the soft couch at this time. Her hair, which had just woken up, was loose and disheveled. A tuft of it stuck up on the top of her head. Her serious appearance of raising her hand and swearing was very silly, but in Shui Rui's eyes, it was extremely cute. Paw. Shui Rui raised his hand and lightly patted her palm, making a crisp sound. However, he did not move away. Instead, he took the opportunity to hold her entire hand. He moved in front of her and pecked the back of her warm hand. Chapter 623. Yushu mentioned the Tihu incense to Xan Lishan on a whim. She didn't have much hope, but Xan Lishan gave her a surprise. You mean the Tihu incense? Xan Lishan looked at her suspiciously. Have you seen the Tai Ching tripod of the Xan family? Yushu raised her eyebrows and said, I've seen it more than that. The left judge gave me a fake Tai Ching tripod. Oh, Xan Lishan drawled and said with a look of understanding. He gave you the tripod, but he didn't give you the Tihu incense, right? He did, but it's not enough. That's why I asked you if you know how to make it. If you can, then we'll make a deal. I'll let you study my feng shui pool, and you have to provide me with the Tihu incense. What if I don't know how to make it? You don't know how to make it? Yushu stood up and was about to go out. Then forget it. Forget it. Hey, Xan Lishan hurriedly stopped her. Don't leave in a hurry. I didn't say I don't know how to make it. Yushu turned her head and looked doubtful. Do you know how to make it? Are you kidding? Lord Xan gave you the Tihu incense, but didn't he tell you who made it? Xan Lishan mentioned his father and called him Lord Xan, as if he was not his father. What's with your eyes? Don't you believe that I made the Tihu incense? Yushu slowly turned back and sat down. She put her hands on her knees and looked at him. I believe you. Let's talk. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Yushu walked out of Xan Lishan's room as she wished and got on the carriage to return home. When she left, she had an extra list in her hand, and on it were the spices, herbs, and various utensils needed to make the Tihu fragrance pill. Xan Lishan would be able to start making it after she bought all of them. They agreed that when he made the Tihu incense, Yushu would let him go to the balcony on the 3rd floor to see the feng shui pool after she inspected it. The next day Mu Xiao and Yushu led 2 guards to Taisha Library to pack a few things. Ever since the death of Zhan Shuiyuan during the Hungry Ghost Festival, she had never been to the Taisha Library again. Even Ren Qiming had specifically reminded her not to do so, so she had openly skipped school. There was no need to go to the Celestial Commissioner's office. Yushu was wearing casual clothes today. Although she had tens of thousands of taels of silver, she didn't need to spend much effort on her clothes. She just casually wore a dress and no one could tell that she was the legendary Miaoling messenger. From the gate to the female dormitory she was followed by 2 armed guards. Some people recognized her, but none of them dared to come forward to greet her. This was also the result of Yushu's reclusive behavior in the Taisha Library and not making many friends. Arriving at the female dormitory, Yushu had Lu Hong and Su Qing wait outside the courtyard while she went in alone. No one had entered or left her room for more than half a month. When she pushed the door open there was a dusty smell. She habitually checked the doors and windows to make sure that no one had sneaked into her room while she was gone. While she was pacing around in her room, the people who had seen her spread the news in the study garden. In less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, all the students who didn't have morning classes knew that Yushu had arrived. This caused an uproar. After Yushu had made a name for herself at the Water and Continent Conference, she hadn't shown her face again. In just half a month, Yushu, the Miaoling messenger conferred by the emperor, had become a legendary figure. Now that they heard that she was in the Taisha Library, how could they not be excited? So, when Yushu finished tidying up in her room and came out with her things, she was unprepared to be surrounded in front of the door of the female dormitory. Lu Hong and Su Qing tried their best to maintain a serious expression on their faces as they looked at the crowd of students peeking their heads out of the walls and whispering to each other. They gripped the hilt of their sabers tightly with one hand and stretched out the other to create a path for Yushu to pass through. Lord Messenger, are you leaving the school and not going to stay in the Taisha Library in the future? Originally the crowd was just watching, but an unfamiliar person asked in a loud voice. Once it started there was a series of questions. Everyone was talking at once, mostly concerned about whether Yushu would continue to stay in the Taisha Library to study. Yushu didn't expect this scene, and she didn't know that the restaurants and tea houses outside were talking about her amazing abilities. So, faced with such a group of enthusiastic young people, she was very confused. She could only smile and say perfunctorily, although I hope to learn more from the academicians, I can't be at 2 places at once. I have official business to attend to, so I won't be coming to the library in the near future. Some people looked disappointed, thinking that if Yushu could stay, they could always find a chance to get close to her and ask for advice. As the saying goes, the pavilion closest to the water is the pavilion closest to the water. Maybe they could benefit a lot from a few pointers from her. Some people were more thick-skinned and took the opportunity to ask, "May I know where your residence is? Will you be able to visit another day?" Yushu thought that even if she didn't say it, people would be able to find out, so she generously told them, "The new residence has been completed. It is on Baochang Street." The crowd saw that she was not as arrogant as they had heard behind her back when she asked and answered. They had a good impression of her. First, they envied her for being young and promising, and second, they admired her abilities. Those who were truly envious were in the minority. This was all thanks to the eloquent storytellers who had described her so deeply in the stories, turning her into a pillar that could redeem the reputation of the masters of the Kingdom of Tranquility. This group of people followed Yushu to the gate and watched her board the carriage to leave. Only then did they discuss the Water and Land Conference with unsatisfied expressions and go back to class. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.